Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys so much for joining me and happy Friday. I hope you guys are doing well. Obviously, we're doing live astrology readings this evening. So this is November 14th, 2025. If you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up, say hello in the chat. I'm glad to be here and doing some live readings on this up and coming new moon in the sign of Scorpio. So while you're here, drop a hello, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. And I'm excited to get into these readings. We've got a number of people who are already in the queue this evening and a couple of our level 4 members as well. So if you guys didn't know, I have memberships on the channel. There's 4 different levels, but if you sign up for level 4, you're gonna get your choice of one reading once a month on one of my live Fridays, your choice between tarot or astrology. And we always take our level 4 members first, but there's all different kinds of levels to support my work as a full-time content creator. So if you want to support me and you regularly get readings, consider joining my memberships. Now, if this is your first time getting a reading, scan the QR code right here or right here, depending on where it is this evening. And if you scan the QR code, it's going to take you to my PayPal, and we're doing astrology readings by donation. So we're doing readings for $55 US. We are also offering synastry if you want to get a synastry reading as well. So make sure in the memo box when you guys get your reading, I need to know your exact time, date, and location of birth. So please spell out the month for me because I'm here in the United States and I know we do it different than some of the other countries around the world. And we've got people tuning in from all over. I also need the exact time of your birth with the AM and the PM, and then ask me your one question. You can ask questions about natal aspects, timing questions, obviously relationship related things, and time periods for planning. Or you can just ask questions about this up and coming new moon in Scorpio. It is a doozy. If you guys haven't already seen the video that I did on the new moon in Scorpio, definitely check it out. It's pretty unusual. It does make an opposition to Uranus and Taurus. We see a Mercury Cazimi, and this is all happening under a new moon. I like the trines to Jupiter and also the trines to Saturn as well as Neptune. So if we can tap into the potential, change can be remarkable over the next 6 months. But obviously there's going to be some curveballs with that Uranus opposition. So if you happen to have any planets around 27, 28, 29 degrees of the fixed signs, like Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, it's going to be particularly colorful for you guys. So I definitely recommend getting a reading. In terms of the reading order, so if you guys haven't been here before, like I said, we take the level 4 people first. You'll hear me go through those readings, and then we'll move on to whoever has sent a payment, either through Super Chat, which we take through YouTube, or through PayPal. And then we're going to pull the readings up live in real time. You guys can go back and forth with me if you want in the chat. We always have like a good group of people here, so it's nice to see you guys back. It looks like Rosie popped in to say hello. Enchanted's here for a reading. Baby's here. AR is here. Vanessa, I got your reading request. David's the hype man in the chat. And what's up, Jacob? All right, so let's get right into it. This is who I have. We're going to take Enchanted, Crossroads, and Baby first because they're level 4. But I've got Mandy, Cassandra, AR, and Vanessa so far who have gotten in the queue for readings. We will let you guys know when we're going to call last call. So when you hear that, that basically means that we're getting ready to shut down the readings depending on how many we have. Sometimes it gets really busy, so I appreciate your guys' patience because we want to make sure everybody gets a thorough reading and also that we're taking the readings in the order that they're received. So if you can't wait to come, if you can't wait for your reading or if you want to put in your order and then you want to come back, we always leave these videos up on the channel. Also, so you can come back and give me feedback. So if you get a reading now and you see it kind of manifest and unfold over the next couple of weeks and months, you can come back and leave me a comment and let me know what happened for you. It's always really great to be able to see feedback because it gives other people a little bit of insight in terms of how astrology works and doesn't make me feel so crazy on the internet. So we're going to be starting with Enchanted Crossroads. And please, don't forget to hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe, share out the stream if you know other people who want readings. And we'll get right into it with Enchanted. So what's up, Enchanted? It's nice to see you back. Enchanted says, cashing in, I'd like to know how this new moon is going to impact and affect me. So Enchanted Crossroads is a 0 degrees Aries rising, sun in Aquarius, and the moon is in Scorpio. So we're going to see the new moon coming in on November 19th or 20th. It depends on your specific time zones, but it's going to be in the middle of the night here in the United States. So it looks like when that new moon happens, it's going to be around 12:47 a.m. Central Time. Might be later at night if you're on the Pacific coast. I don't exactly remember where you live. But a new moon obviously is planting a new seed, right? So whenever we think about new moons, we have to really keep in mind that the intentions that are being seeded now, we're really going to see play out over the better part of the next 2 to 4 weeks as we are getting, on with Scorpio season into Sagittarius season, and it'll be in play until we get to the new moon in Sag. But it also takes about 6 months until we get into the spring of 2026 when we see a full moon in Scorpio, and that'll be like the conclusion or the completion. So there's a couple of things that I look at. I look at the ruler of the new moon to see how it's aspected. And if I'm looking at it with a natal chart, I'm going to see how this is kind of playing with their natal aspects. Is it conjunct a planet, square? Is it trining something? So being in Aries rising, it's really significant because not only is it in a Mars-ruled sign, so Mars is really what we're going to want to pay attention to, but we also want to see what's going on with your natal Mars. So if you're in Aries rising, then that means that you're having this new moon that's going to be in your 8th house in the sign of Scorpio, okay? Probably what catches my eye just right off the bat is the fact that the new moon is going to be not only making a trine to your ascendant, it's a little bit around about 1.5 degrees because this is 28, so it's an out of element trine, but it is trining your ascendant. But it's also sitting right on top of your Juno. So Juno's not a planet, it's an asteroid. Obviously Juno is the asteroid or the planet that deals with partnership. It can be seen as companionship, more in a romantic sense. It can also be offering you some kind of renewal when it comes to transformation in intimate relationships in your 8th house. And seeding something that's going to be about your close relationship that you have to someone or something. So it can mean your relationship to money, right? Your relationship to intimacy and partnerships, and maybe bringing opportunities over the next 6 months for somebody new to come in. Now, the other thing that I look at is what's going on with obviously transit Mars and natal Mars, because Scorpio is ruled both by Mars and Pluto. And this is hosted by Mars in Sagittarius, which is right on top of your point of fortune. So it means that there may be more of an emphasis on really focusing on making money or learning more about investing, savings, financing, maybe resources that are going towards traveling, education, writing, publishing, all of that stuff. And I like that it's on your point of fortune, because you hear fortune, people automatically just assume, okay, well, that means it's good. Not necessarily. It just means that when planets are conjunct that, especially outer planets or when you see lunations, it's kind of seeding something that's going to be giving you some kind of like destined, thing that's manifesting. So not only do you see Mars transiting your point of fortune, which happens every 2 years, but it's seated in this new moon. So it means that probably over the next 6 months, you're going to have opportunities to make money through teaching, maybe traveling, things connecting to publishing. And that's part of like your point of fortune, kind of like your destiny. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we look at what's going on with Pluto, which is still in Aquarius, and it will be, and I know you've been under this very intense Pluto transit. Obviously, Pluto's sitting on top of your natal chart ruler is going to represent, all right, well, this is a powerful period of purging, transformation, releasing, and letting go. But it is the ruler of the 8th house. So it means that your goals revolving around friendships, changes with your financial goals, shift revolving around your network and your community is also getting a bit powered up. And thankfully, this new moon is kind of sextiling your Mars. You have to kind of really spot this because it's out of element, but it's within 2 degrees of a sextile to Mars. So you'll see the 2 to 3 days after the new moon, as the sun is starting to come into a sextile with Pluto, which is right on top of your Mars. There may be some new goals that you have about teaching with a network, connecting with a community, talking and working with people online, traveling to kind of visit and meet with friends. And one of the bigger aspects that I would consider positive of this new moon is the fact that it does trine Saturn. So it's bringing stability. Yes, Saturn is retrograde. You're going to hear me talk about this on Astro Weather on Sunday. So it does bring you a sense of pausing and kind of reflecting when it comes to your professional life and your career goals, or maybe this is a period of deep, intense, spiritual purification, meditation, taking time to really reflect and ask yourself internally, what needs to change? And what do I believe this whole process of kind of releasing and letting go is all about? And I think it's going to be tied to financial matters and also your intuition, what you're feeling, what moves you're feeling you should be making, either in terms of travel or finances. It's also trining Neptune, which is really great for listening to your instincts and your intuition. It's also really strong for dreams and like visions kicking in about what moves you should be making or what needs to change. And the beauty is when you see trines happening, even in water signs, the healing, the clearing, the releasing, the mourning, all of that kind of heavy Scorpio 8th house stuff, it comes with more ease. And there is a sense of acknowledging, okay, this is done, this is dead, it's time for it to go. I need to, let this go so it can regenerate something new. And your gut's going to be telling you what's going to be regenerating. So it can be both financial 8th house, it can be psychological. It can also be revolving around, opening yourself up to new people and practicing kind of vulnerability and tapping into your spidey instincts. We also see that there is a trine to Jupiter, which you're going to see that's kind of building up this week, kind of like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. The sun will trine Jupiter, then it's going to trine Saturn, then we go into the new moon. So with a new moon that's trining Jupiter, even though Jupiter is retrograde, it's bringing you the opportunity for more Jupiter things. Technically, Jupiter's sitting in your 5th house, so it's about getting creative and finding creative ways to make money. It can also open the door to new romantic connections. As a Aries rising, you're going to hear this is more about changes that are happening financially and also on the home front, or finally making peace and kind of releasing something revolving around home and family dilemmas. So you have a grand water trine that is set up during this particular new moon. With Mercury Cazimi, I think this is about really realizing or recognizing what either habits, work habits, health habits are needing to go and what needs to change, because Mercury is connected to that self node. It can also be ways that you're improving your health and habits through detoxing. So I would say this to like any Aries rising is the next couple of days into next week, heavy metal detoxes, anything that's going to be about letting go of bad habits, anything that deals with reproductive health, elimination, cleaning out the digestion, the bowels. These are all kind of Scorpio related things. And the water elements are going to be about water. So it can mean that a good detoxing bath can be really helpful, or you're deciding that you want to do a cleanse or you want to do a fast. Maybe you're cutting something out of your diet, or you're trying to kind of stabilize or balance hormones. That stuff can kind of come from this as well. Obviously not a doctor, but you'll see with that connection to Scorpio and Mercury that it's going to be about letting go of bad habits. Now, they could be psychological as well. It could also be regarding works, kind of management, schedule management, and what is impacting you psychologically because of ways that you're working that's not working for you. It's working against you. So water, 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 and more water is basically how I see this. The challenging aspect that you'll see from this new moon is that it is going to be in opposition to Uranus. And Uranus is back in Taurus now, so it is bringing up some unexpected financial twists and turns, obviously ruled by Venus, which is continuing to go through Scorpio. And I think with like a new moon in your 8th house, with Venus in your 8th house, with Mercury retrograde, there can be a sense of you going, well, how do I budget? Or how do I, make changes in my health? Or how do I, learn how to navigate stuff that's going on with, taxes? It can be about saving money, investing money, loans, dealing with debt. And you're going to see quite a few oppositions in this next week with Mercury, the new moon, and also the sun opposing Uranus. So this to me screams money in, money out. Scorpio deals with more of other people's money. So whether it's insurance related matters or credit cards, or it could be money that's owed to you, or anything revolving around savings. And when these planets make oppositions to Uranus, you need to be ready for anything to happen. There can be a bit of like a pivot or something that can kind of happen suddenly in terms of your spending habits. And I think that for the most part, this is about you getting kind of crafty and trying to figure out ways that you can be more optimistic about your financial situation, and try to kind of plan for, like a rainy day fund. That's what this kind of looks like to me. Now, something else to consider is that, like I said, this will take about 6 months to unfold. So you'll want to maybe think back to what happened, in recent years. So we've had several Scorpio seasons now where there has been either new moons or planets going through Scorpio that have made oppositions to Uranus and Taurus. This does make changes in your values. It can also be changes in your eating habits, and also what you're willing to kind of hold on to in terms of your friendships, because Uranus is tied to your 11th house, or your values in general. So it can be a sense of you going, I don't want to spend money on this anymore, or I think this is really valuable, or this is a new goal that I have in terms of finances. And the Venus transit through the 8th house can be really good for generating resources that come from other people. So if you have something that's in demand, whether it's a service, if it's a product, something you're selling, anything revolving around, kind of like pitching yourself even to groups, there can be a sense of there being some money-making opportunities that can kind of come from that. Now, I would, and I have said this in my Sunday video, I would really lean more into the trines with Saturn and Jupiter. And for me, I look at this and it's like, well, it's time to get creative and get outside of the box and maybe be a little bit more vulnerable and willing to show some of your skills and some of your talent to other people, and really knowing your worth and investing in that. Likely what you will find is around the time that we are getting into what's going to be Taurus season next year, when that full moon comes in, you're going to see what is going to transpire. So we can actually take a look at that really quick, because I haven't looked at that full moon yet. So I'm a little curious. So that full moon in Scorpio will be coming in at, the irony, it's coming in at 11 degrees. Okay, so, 11s deal with Uranus. It's about unexpected sudden change. So the fact that you have a new moon that's going to oppose Uranus, and then you're going to have then a full moon in 6 months' time that's going to be conjunct your natal Uranus, is basically spelling out you need to be ready and prepared to really make some big financial pivots, I think, over the next 6 months. Now, when this comes in, Pluto's off your Mars, so you're going to be doing a little bit better in that department. But the moon conjunct Uranus is saying there's still going to be some surprises. And if you look at the ruler, the dispositor of the moon, it's Mars, which is conjunct Saturn. So this, to me, seems like it's definitely more connected to your personal boundaries, your goals, your self-assertiveness. It can also be connected to your health. It can be connected to anything revolving around bravery and being courageous. Certainly Mars being kind of in conjunction to Saturn and also Neptune, I think could mean that it's about you really, coming online and being like, okay, now I'm really ready to be more much more of a self-starter, or feeling self-motivated when it comes to your career, because your chart ruler is going to be meeting with the 10th house Lord. Still does talk a lot about health. You'll be coming into your Chiron return. It looks like Mercury will conjunct Chiron. So I will go as far as saying if there's anything health-wise or psychological right now that you're neglecting to deal with, it will come back up in March when you have some eclipses and some retrogrades, and then it will come back up again in May. And I would be most focused on, are you getting adequate nutrition? Are you getting enough iron? Are you getting enough protein? Is there anything that's maybe starting to kind of come up now that, could be health related, that's as a result of repressed emotions? That's what I would be the most focused on. So let me know what happens with the new moon in opposition to Uranus. I mean, certainly there can be some unexpected things, but it can actually be some really positive breakthroughs that you're having financially and psychologically. All right, just getting back to the queue here. What's up, Rosie? I see you. 90 Outlook. I'll put you on my list. So far, 3 of your readings come through. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Are you doing an email list, or when you're doing tarot cards to remind when it's coming out? They're out. So if you're not on my newsletter, go and check my newsletter. We'll post can we post the link to the Etsy store on the chat? I did an unboxing video this week, so I go through the whole deck and talk about the process and how I decided to go about it and all that stuff. You'll see more of the deck. I used the deck in the horoscopes, and I also did the 12 signs taroscopes this month for November. So if you want to see what it looks like, check it out. But as of right now, if you're interested in getting my deck, there's only 30 decks left. So we're kind of blown away with how many have sold over the last couple of days. We're only going to sell 100 of them total, so 70 of them are gone. There's 30 left. I recommend going and picking up a deck, because come Christmas, I don't think there's going to be any left. And if you want to get one as a gift, or if you want to get it before Christmas, I recommend ordering before December the 5th, just because of processing time. We're shipping it from a warehouse. We want to make sure there's enough time for it to get to you. So hopefully you can check out the unboxing video. It's on the channel, and I hope you guys like it. All right, so we're gonna now move to, let's see, who else do I have on my list? So Enchanted, I hope that that is helpful and gives you your insight. And then we've got Baby and then Rosie. And if you guys still wanna get a reading, scan the QR code, I'll put you in the queue. So let's pull up Baby. Let's see what's going on with her. She says, hey Candace, I forgot to get in my reading last month, so I made sure to get on this one. Lots of stuff going on in my life, and right now, feeling good about it all. New job, new housing on the way. Well, I like that. So for Baby, we've got a Taurus rising. Her sun is in Pisces, and her moon is in Sagittarius. So if we kind of take a look at what's happening, you know, in her chart right now, it's cool that you got a new home. Look at that. Jupiter's right on your IC. It is retrograding back, but it can mean that there is much more kind of joy and expansion and positivity on the way in regards to your home situation. So I'm glad to hear that. Obviously, there's a lot of other things going on in your chart. So one is, and let's just talk about the positives, is that you're a Taurus rising. So we're going to be super focused on what's going on with Venus, both transit Venus and also what's going on with your natal Venus. Well, Venus is in Scorpio, so it can be a little intense and a little passionate, but actually over the weekend, it looks like Venus is going to be conjunct your Mars, which, you know, you get that once a year. But Venus and Mars are lovers, and obviously having Venus going through the 7th house can be not only a really good time for relationships, but it's a good time for getting a reading. Your 7th house is your astrologer. So Venus coming into conjunction with Mars in 11 can mean that there's more togetherness with friends, more social opportunities. It can also be a time that's really focused on like love and relationships. Okay, pivot, right? In spite of that, you're also seeing Mercury is retrograding back into your 7th house. And Mercury is going to obviously deal with, you know, money, resources, anything revolving around values. For a whole sign Taurus rising, it is the 5th house lord. So it can be a time where an old romantic partner is kind of coming back. It can be a time where, you know, you're reconnecting with somebody who you used to work with, or maybe somebody who you kind of had a crush on. And it can bring exes back too when you have retrogrades in your 7th house. And so there's going to be some interesting stuff that's going to be playing out between, you know, Venus conjunct your Mars over the next couple days. You're in a Mercury retrograde where there's a lot of reevaluating relationships and what you want in relationships. If you're in one, do you stay in it? If you're not, do you get back out there? And then on top of that, then you're going to have a new moon that's going to be taking place in your 7th house where you plant new seeds in relationships in exact opposition to Uranus in your sign. So I look at a Taurus rising with Uranus in the 1st house and I'm like, well, there's still a lot of don't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me, blah, blah, blah. And this retrograde and this new moon is going to oppose that, which means there is a lot of changing energies or people coming in that are either going to offer you partnership or they're going to want to work with you in some way. And on one hand, the opposites can really strongly kind of bring somebody in like a magnet, but it can also rub you the wrong way. So there is a possibility that, you know, miscommunications with other people, there's delays with other people. But the retrograde actually started in your 8th house. So it's a lot of maybe going deeper in relationships, addressing trust issues, any issues that you have revolving around vulnerability, whether or not you can, you know, deal with people and be diplomatic, or if people are kind of miscommunicating and having some issues. So all of these planets are moving in opposition to your 1st house. So it's a lot of other people's stuff. Positive is that you are going to see this new moon that's coming in. It's going to be making a trine to Jupiter in your 4th house. And I feel like now that you're getting home situated, you know, part of what's happening with Mercury, which rules work, is retrograde, and it's going to make some aspects in your 7th, is getting that feedback, right? About when do I start the new job and what do you need from me, and meeting new people, and, you know, trying to kind of get the lay of the land of this new schedule or new place that you're working. Yeah, it can make you a little frazzled. I feel like, you know, Uranus thankfully is technically in your Placidus chart, your 11th house lord. So it's more about working with a new team. Perhaps maybe it's going to be about, you know, getting back into the swing of being social It's possible that you're trying to really focus on work right now and you're adjusting to some of those changes and you're having to tell some friends, hey, this is when I'm available, this is when I'm not. And that can cause a little bit of static. So that new moon that's coming in on like the 19th or the 20th, it will not only oppose Uranus in your sign, where it's really showing you, hey, you know what, new relationship opportunities can be really positive. It can show you where there's room for improvement or, you know, learning how to be diplomatic and working together as a team. It's also going to be, like I said, trining Jupiter, so it feels good to have your house in order. Maybe you feel more capable of showing up in a relationship type sense now. And it's going to be in a trine to Saturn in Pisces, which is technically in your 12th house. So I see this as getting your bedroom in order, you know, getting your house in order, feeling like you can finally have a sigh of relief now that you've got your house together. Now you focus on work and then try to figure out how to kind of factor in partnerships or relationships into that as well. All the while, I'm looking at Mars going through your 8th house, hitting your Pluto, hitting your moon. And this can mean that, yeah, there's now new expenses and things pertaining to where you're living, or maybe now it's the financial change of now working or getting a new job that's coming in. So it's really giving you a little bit more cushion and feeling like there's more security in a financial sense. You'll have to see how this plays out for 6 months, but I do feel like a lot of this, to me, seems like you're getting a lot of relief and an opportunity to totally rework everything in regards to relationships. She says, yes, I love my astrologer and my honey, and we're doing really well, and I feel very in love after that freaking Mars conjunction with Mercury. Well, there's going to be another conjunction. So not only do we see with the new moon that there's going to be a Mercury cazimi, but also we're going to be then seeing that as Mercury continues to go retrograde, it's conjunct Venus. So I think as a Taurus rising, there's been a lot of, okay, you know, how do we go deeper into relationships? And a lot of that is your 8th house stuff. So it's talking about vulnerability, intimacy, fears, talking about money stuff, finding ways to be able to kind of connect in a more intimate way. And reaching your goals together. So I think that can be positive. Definitely a lot of like joint budgeting and financial things. So I don't know if you moved in together or you're talking about that or you have some goals for the future, but that's really what the retrograde is, I think, a lot about. She says, 2 awful dreams about the 2 people who broke my heart. Well, that's definitely the Mercury retrograde doing its thing because Mercury was conjunct Mars, which is your whole sign 12th house ruler. So it's about people from the past. So she says, yes to all the subconscious crap that's coming up as I'm getting more stable. I'm grateful for the opportunity to work through things and attract better as I release more crap. And so the releasing of the crap is literally Scorpio, trining Saturn and Neptune and Pisces. And the detoxing and the clearing out and the cleansing, I would just say, you know, Jupiter is about like rituals, and Jupiter being in a trine to a lot of these planets in Scorpio can mean it's about doing a home blessing, clearing everything out. Maybe it's about, you know, washing the floors with some salt and some lemon or some Florida water. It's about using like liquids and prayer. And it's also trining Saturn and Neptune in the 12th house, which could be about your bedroom, to which I would say smudging, using some salt, you know, something like that to clear out anything that's kind of lurking around in your dreams or in your subconscious is definitely very likely going on. The other thing is that's kind of happening is, you know, this Mars transit, which is very much about relationships, is right on your Pluto and right on your moon. So to me, it looks like a very sexy time. And obviously having moon Pluto, you're very psychically sensitive, especially in the 8th house. So when Mars goes through that, you're picking up on all kinds of feelers and things going on with other people. But I think it could actually be a really great time where there is a lot of togetherness with another person and focusing on your goals. The other thing that's worth mentioning at the same time is that the North Node is conjunct your Sun. It's been conjunct your Sun for the better part of the last month or so. You're starting to lose it now. But the Sun brings vitality. It obviously brings success. It's also going to bring joy and personal fulfillment. So in the 11th house, this is going to be your goals regarding your home and also your relationships, because the Sun rules your 5th and it's your whole sign 4th house ruler. What I like about that is that also it can be a very social time. So you can be aware of your goals, you're feeling more confident, you're busy. There's a lot more energy and being kind of in tune with that Pisces energy of knowing where exactly you need to go. But it can bring in friends and other people who can kind of support you and fulfillment of your goals, which is ruled by Jupiter, right? And Jupiter's in the 4th. So it does look like there's been a team effort or there's been support from community or other people to help you move through some of these changes that are happening on the home front, but also it's been expanding relationships. I do think that will continue. I would keep an eye on when you see Venus coming into conjunction with Mercury. I can't promise you that there's not going to be some kind of potential either flare up in an existing relationship. Obviously, I hope not. If it's going to happen, it would be right around the new moon, around like the 19th or the 21st. And then when Mercury continues its retrograde, it's going to retrograde back into conjunction with Venus, and that's going to happen around the 25th. So what is Mercury? You know, old lovers, south node, and then obviously Venus is you. So there can be a little bit of a miscommunication in an existing relationship. There is a possibility that you're still kind of getting terrorized by exes on the astral. And I would say really be good about protecting your space, clearing your space, particularly in your bedroom, and protecting your relationship. And if any emotions or feelings come up about this, talking it out in an existing relationship, or if somebody comes back, I would not recommend opening that door, because I feel like Mercury is the mind and Venus is love. So there can't be this sense of being totally present with somebody while you're going back and forth with the past. And the trines to Saturn and Neptune is saying it's time to release it, let it go. And the trines to Jupiter is saying you're getting on with what's the next phase of your life and where you're moving into, literally or figuratively, both in your home, but also in your relationship. There's no room for the past. The past has to be dealt with. So I would use the dark moon, if this were me, to cut any ties or anything karmically, if you want to do like a cord cutting or something like that, to release someone. Because right when we're coming into the dark moon on the 19th, this is when we clear stuff out and we banish things. So you're banishing out old relationships and what people kind of have that hold over you. And Mars is going to be right on your Pluto and right on your moon. And this is a time that you want to go, nope, we're not bringing the past into this house. I don't want it here. I don't want it in this relationship. I'm protecting it, and find a way to do away with it. She says, there is one person that terrorizes my mind, and I hope he doesn't say anything because that will throw me so off. He has no girlfriend though, so I don't think so. What did you say? He has a girlfriend though, so I don't think so. I feel like most of it is my own work. Yeah, readings are still open. I would say, I mean, Mars is conjunct your moon and also Pluto. Scorpio is going to be good for, I like Scorpio, like new moons, to light a black or a red candle. I would use black walnut powder for banishing, or salt, or you can use black salt. And I would probably do like a detox bath, and I would throw some salt, some other things in there that you could detox with, and use something that's going to be like really strong and kind of pungent in terms of like a Scorpio scents. Incense can be good. Do like a full soak with like a prayer because of that trine to Jupiter, and also protect your home. And then what you want to do is you want to stay in the bathtub, pull the drain, and then let everything drain out. You want to visualize everything going down the drain. And then probably, you know, do some prayers or something to protect your home or your bed space, and then do something to kind of, protect your space. Put some salt out or something in like your bedroom. But definitely working with hot water, fire and water, water and salt, that kind of stuff can be really beneficial for some of the trines that you're going to have. So Scorpio in general deals more with like the root chakra, and it's going to deal more with like the reproductive organs. So anything revolving around banishing, cutting, clearing, anything like a meditation with the root chakra, working with dark stones. So, you know, ruby or garnet, or if you want to work with bloodstone or black tourmaline, that stuff can be really good because you're focusing on detaching that part of your body, right? The root, from any feeling of not feeling safe. And it can also mean that attachment that you have to other people who you've been with like intimately, and clearing that out. And that's right on the cusp of the 8th house. So it's really detoxing and purging from a psychological, but also a physical level. So hopefully that's helpful in giving you some insights. If you guys haven't seen my my astrology calendars, so I put out a calendar every year and I do a whole profile on the different signs. So I'm looking at it across the room. But the Scorpio, for example, you know, every month is going to have info on the sign, the crystals to work with, a ritual I recommend, the herbs to work with, the incenses, the oils. And I talk about all of the stuff that you can utilize that month to channel that energy. So I do that because I'm not just into astrology and tarot. I'm into working with herbalism and like metaphysical kind of shifts. So if you're into that stuff, check out my 2026 calendar. It's on sale on my website. So you can have that every month. So as you're seeing some of the stuff happening in the skies, the transits are also listed. So you can go, oh, it's a new moon in Scorpio. I work with these herbs. It's super helpful. You're welcome. All right, so that was baby. I think we're going to hear a lot of this stuff with the Scorpio new moon. All right, let's pull up Rosie. Let's see what Rosie's got going on. And Rosie, just to confirm, that was the March 15th, 84, right? You're welcome. And if you guys are watching this, give me a thumbs up, like the stream. It helps get the stream out there. I would appreciate it. And if you're watching for the first time, pop in and let me know where you're tuning in from. Rosie, Capricorn rising. I've got the sun in Pisces and the moon is in Leo. There we go. All right, cool. Welcome, Neo. Thanks for joining level 4. Let me know if you want to get a reading tonight. So Rosie wants to know a little bit of an overview. She says, please read Peace and Light, 90-day outlook, feeling extra rocky and unsure at work. Any suggestions to work on that ugly old friend insecurity into 2026? All right, well, I would assume part of what's going on is the fact that you've got a lot of stuff going through your whole sign 12th right now, okay? So even though you're a Capricorn rising, a lot of the retrograde is very similar to what like Sagittarius risings are going through. And all of this is hovering very close to your south node. And your chart ruler is Saturn, and Saturn is also retrograde. Although Saturn's going to wake up here later in the month. So when Saturn goes direct, it can actually be quite beneficial for you. I've been rude over the last month or so, and I've just grown a wobbly adult. It's embarrassing. So, all right. Saturn retrograde back over the kind of third house cusp is definitely really highlighting your communication skills. And Saturn and Neptune are very close to your sun. So a lot of it's bringing up, I think, reluctance to change, or where fear is coming up, or you're having a difficult time communicating. And like, look, Saturn is a grouch, right? If you're a Capricorn rising, I think you probably know all about that. But when Saturn is going back and forth over your sun at 24, I look at that and I go, well, there are some things that she's been wanting to say that she's been kind of holding on internally. And then when she holds on to it, she's not communicating regularly. Things can come out and they can definitely seem a little bit more stern, or a little bit, more challenging in terms of your communication style. And a lot of it's just reluctance to communicate and put yourself out there. So it's about finding that middle ground between saying nothing and then saying too much, which I know easier said than done. Now, the positive is that as we're going through this new moon in Scorpio, it is sitting very close to your Mars, and Mars is going to be really pushing you to take action when it comes to your emotions, because it rules your 4th house. It could also be dealing with the past, dealing with home or family related matters. And it is trining Saturn. So I think actually Capricorn risings are going to like this, because it's really implying, hey, something needs to change revolving around the way that you communicate and connect with other people, groups. And be mindful that, there could be some pretty dramatic changes with groups if you're not paying attention to some of Saturn's lessons regarding communication. On the other hand, this new moon is also trining Jupiter in your 7th house. So it can be improving relationships. However, with Saturn, trining Jupiter, and both of them are retrograde, it almost makes me feel like certain relationships or certain people can seem distant, or they can kind of pull away. And that could be family relationships like siblings with Saturn in the 3rd house. That can be dealing with neighbors. Romantic relationships could feel a little challenging and a little charged. And I think the new moon conjunct Mars is just really going to give you an opportunity to hit restart and go, what are my goals when it comes to connecting with other people? How can I transform them? Do I have to show up in an intense way? And to be honest with you, this opposition to Uranus, which has been in opposition to Mars off and on for the last year or two, is really saying to me, there are some people who are worth investing in, reconnecting, spending time with them, being around them. And then there's other people that you're just realizing it's not so much just the way you're communicating, your emotions that are kind of getting built up are trying to teach you, hey, this doesn't feel loving. This doesn't feel fun. And that's the friction that you get with the opposition to Uranus. So you might feel like, well, what they want to do, what I want to do are two different things. And why would I want to talk to them? Or why do I want to be friendly with them? She says, I really like this job and people, I'm just not doing right by me, or them saying, yes, stern. I've been saying stern. I'd love to grow and be less restrictive and easier to connect with me for others. And so I think the key here, because the ruler of the new moon is Mars, and Mars is hanging out on the south node, is we have to release any repressed frustration, anger, or agitation. Mercury started its retrograde right next to that degree. I think it started at 6. Mars is now hitting the south node. And this tells me you got to be prepared. Like as you're going into the next week with the new moon, Mars on the south node in the 11th house, and that opposition to Uranus makes me feel like some people are going to be like, I can't deal with you. That's it. I'm done. I don't want to interact with you. So be mindful that by reacting and having knee-jerk reactions, there can be some people that we can turn off, right? But once again, it's about finding the middle ground. I think that you'll get through this. Obviously, as planets are now starting to transition into Sagittarius, now the focus is really going to be more on, okay, end of November into December, where are we sitting with all the 12th house planets? Are you retreating more towards the end of the month? Are you needing to meditate, reflect more? Probably. You might feel a little antsy and a little restless, at least until planets are getting into Capricorn. So that can be a really peak month for, self-realization and taking time alone and trying to meditate more, trying to rest more, trying to heal. And then as we're getting into the end of December, early January, look at your chart, it's on fire. Mercury's in Capricorn, you're communicating better. Venus is going to be in Capricorn conjunct Jupiter, you're feeling a little bit more loving and charming. Sun is in the first house, you're feeling confident. Mars is in the first house, there's drive. So it's almost like this rebirth energy is going to show up for you in a very big way, I think, towards the beginning of January. So it is possible that, December may seem like a quiet, somber month. I also want to remind you that as all these planets are going through Sagittarius in December, they're all going to square Saturn and they're all going to square Neptune, which means if you're not consciously taking time to rest and unwind, and sometimes it means taking a nap, right? Sometimes it means that, we decide we're going to commit to a month of daily meditation, or that you're going to be doing some kind of traveling or spiritual kind of studying, Sag in the 12th, to help you manage and deal with some of these squares to Saturn and Neptune. Certainly journaling or having some kind of like reflective process that you go through is what I would be doing the entire month of December. So as you come back in January in the new year, you have kind of, taken some time to reflect on, well, why do I feel this way? And why am I getting agitated? And where this is coming from? And is there repressed anger? I like Mars transits in the 12th house for dancing. I also like that for like hot yoga or doing, saunas or steams. It can also be a time where, you're physically or psychologically kind of cleaning out the closet. Hypnosis, meditation, past life regressions, anything like that can be really helpful, kind of getting to the root cause and learning more about the subconscious. Your dreams will certainly probably be pretty active here as well. Then once you get into January, things are going to really start improving. And I feel like there's going to be quite a bit of powerful energy with Saturn and Neptune moving away from your sun. However, with astrology, there's always something coming. So the next big transit would then be Saturn and Neptune coming in conjunction with your Mercury, which is pretty much going to start up. Like you're going to start feeling that in January. And it's going to be January through April that you're going to have Saturn and Neptune now conjunct Mercury. And Mercury is health-related matters, work-related matters. Neptune distorts things. So there could be mental health challenges here, communication challenges here. There could also be challenges revolving around lung health. And certainly Aries is a sign that's known for getting pissed off. So Saturn, Neptune on your Mercury is, where is this, displaced anger, frustration, or rage, or blockages in communication, creating some bigger issues with work habits and also your physical health. So that'll be a transit you're going to be feeling pretty much, the first 6 months of 2026. All the while, when that's happening, it's also going to start squaring your Neptune. And so you were born with Mercury square Neptune, so there can be a sense of you being really sensitive and like keeping it all in. And then the squares to Mercury is maybe not knowing how to assert yourself or communicate or not knowing how to find the words. So I would start learning about Saturn and Neptune transiting my Mercury. That's just me. And where maybe there's a tendency to perceive things that are kind of distorted, or maybe this is about you taking the frame of mind of, hey, I'm going to work on myself, right? Aries, it's about how I'm communicating and learning not to be as reactionary, you know, with talking to other people. And certainly movement in the third house will help. So biking, cycling, walking, right? Even journaling, those things can all be really helpful in helping you figure out how to navigate some of the emotions that are coming up. But definitely mental health stuff and communication stuff. And in the third house, I would be like, really good time to start a divination practice. Pick up a tarot deck, go and get an oracle deck. Maybe get a pendulum, something that you can do with your hands. So you can be using that Saturn, Neptune, where you have structure and also intuition to get insight about yourself. And that could become your ritual and your routine that you could do throughout that transit. So you're like, am I seeing things clearly? Like, let me check with the deck, or like, let me check, you know, my whatever divination process you want. So that way you're learning to see different perspectives and tapping into your intuition, I think, a little bit more, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Rosie. All right, so those are the level 4 people. Let me go back to my messages. Thank you, Emmy. I'll check your info when I get to your reading. Knitting, so there you go. Anything with your hands. Like if you've got that Saturn, Neptune, it's going to be something you're doing with your hands that can be therapeutic and also like in the zone. So if you want to do that, that's totally fine too. I like that you're doing that. Mars is the dispositor of your Mercury. It's in Scorpio, so needles, literally needles. Join a knitting club. Mars is in the 11th. Do it with other people. All right. Hopefully that's helpful. Thank you, Christian. I got you. Astrology Q&A. I'm very curious about my current Saturn return and how this new moon in Scorpio will affect me. Okay, cool. I'll plug in your info in just a second. We're going to keep going with the list. We haven't called last call yet, but if you guys want to get in, scan the QR code and get a reading. I've got Mandy, Cassandra, AR, and Vanessa. You guys are already in my charts, but we had other people pop in here. So Adriana, Ascended Truths, Jen, Meredith, Emily, and Kristen. Kristan, am I saying that right? So if you heard your name, I've got you. So I'm going to now move into the other people who have subscribed, or I guess got in the queue. Neo, I noticed that you joined level 4, so let me know if you would like to get a reading. Otherwise, come back any of the Fridays that I'm here. I'm always generally here, unless it's a holiday, Fridays at 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, and at 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you're like, hey, I'd rather wait for tarot, or I'll come back another day this month, that's fine. You just get one reading once a month, so just let me know. Let's see. All right, so let's move now to my next victim. We've got Mandy and then Cassandra. All right, Mandy, I've got you here, July 15th, 95, Scorpio rising with sun in Cancer, and your moon is in Pisces. Wow, how are you feeling with all these water transits? A lot of the Scorpio risings I've been seeing have been spinning out. It's been a difficult retrograde for you guys, so hopefully you're thriving. Let's see what Mandy says. Mandy says, hi, Candace. I won't be able to make it to the live. I'd like to get some insight on the new moon, Uranus, and general info. I've been doing a lot of inner work, and I don't want to isolate so much, and I hope the stars will give me a break soon. I'm sure they will. Let's take a look and let's see. Oh, it's Coco. Oh, sorry. I was like, who dat? No worries. Just let me know who the synastry is for, Coco, and I can, if you want your reading, I'll put you on my list. I'm just writing that down so I don't forget. All right, so let's see if we can tell Mandy if we can give her any info about the universe giving her a break. She wants to know about the new moon and what's happening with Uranus. And she's been doing a lot of inner work and doesn't want to isolate. I like it. I like that a lot, especially considering, you know, just being a Scorpio rising who has planets in Sag and Scorpio, the retrograde is going directly over your ascendant. And the new moon, it sounds like you know, is going to be also directly on your ascendant, conjunct Pluto, okay, in opposition to Uranus. So you're like, yes, I know.
So if we break it all down, first things first is prior to this new moon happening, you're experiencing a Mercury retrograde, and the shadow has been going on since mid-October. Now in your chart, Mercury deals with the 8th house, which is about change, intimacy, vulnerability, money, sex, and psychological things. So pretty much all Scorpio risings, in particular the late degree Scorpio risings, have been going through this period of being like, okay, I'm getting so flustered, you know, something is not working, and it could mean financial frustrations. It could mean that there's fears coming up for you. It's showing you and making you realize that in order to personally change the ascendant, something has to change about communication, thinking, and how you're embracing change and transformation, which is kind of the name of the game if you're Scorpio rising. So marinate on that. That's what I would start with first, is what has been coming up for you in terms of what are you willing to take charge of? What are you taking responsibility for as Mercury rules your career? And financial or relational changes. That Mercury retrograde is going to continue until the end of the month. You're going to feel the effects of the shadow until mid-December. But what's really interesting is that if we look at the retrograde, Mercury started its retrograde conjunct your Jupiter. So it means that you already know the emotional changes or the home changes or, you know, what have you that needed to happen. And it looks like Mercury and Mars were conjunct Jupiter. So that should have been pretty good in, you know, financial matters. I don't think all Scorpio risings would agree with that because they feel like things have been delayed. But if you've experienced financial challenges, a lot of it's like, are you investing in yourself? Do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel confident? Is there a sense of you needing to really get straight with your own personal values and be investing in yourself more? And the fact that it's now retrograding over your Pluto tells me that there's some very uncomfortable truths that are coming up right now. Your Pluto's at 27 degrees. So obviously when somebody's got Pluto on the ascendant as a Scorpio rising, they're a tough cookie to crack. You have a very strong Scorpio signature. Scorpio rising, Pluto on the ascendant, Sun in the Sun in the 8th house. I mean, like you're a Cancer, but you might as well be an honorary Scorpio as far as I'm concerned. And all of these planets are dancing with each other through the trines. So as you're going through this process of reevaluating, what do I need to change? How can I communicate differently? How can I express myself differently? And it's conjunct Pluto, I would be like, girl, what a great transit for therapy. And I think anybody would benefit from therapy. But if you're going through an 8th house transit, whether your 8th house Lord is retrograde on your ascendant, or maybe your 8th house Lord is retrograde, you know, conjunct your planetary chart ruler, maybe Jupiter's in the 8th house. These are times that I'd be like, yeah, you know, self-reflection and getting some feedback or making some sweeping psychological changes when it comes to your habits is necessary. And it's natural when a Mercury retrograde happens in your sign to go, well, I used to do things this way, and now I want to do things that way. So if you're recognizing where you've been isolating yourself, that's because Mercury is going retrograde back into your 12th house where you are kind of keeping to yourself. Now, positive is that I really think if you're Scorpio rising and if you've got Pluto on your ascendant, you have insane amounts of energy and will and the willingness to change and transform. But your Pluto is retrograde. So it means you have to find your own personal power. A lot of that's maybe going to be through breathing exercises, right? It's at a Gemini degree. Manifestations that happen as a result of affirmations that you're doing, purifying, detoxing kind of rituals, and self-empowerment, I think is going to be the big one. Now, when the new moon comes in, Mercury is still retrograde in the 12th. So it's saying that you still need a little bit of time to kind of meditate on some of these changes. You still feel like you're in the midst of the Mercury retrograde. And the new moon is going to have Mercury conjunct. So if there was ever a time for you to be like, new moon, new me, it's this damn new moon, because not only is it on your ascendant, but it's trining your sun. It's also conjunct your Pluto. So it's like, I'm going to give you until the 20th to kind of continue to be in your Scorpio cave and maybe be reflecting a little bit more. But you must hold yourself accountable for some of the intentions that you're setting under this new moon. It's like everything changes under this new moon. Maybe you don't feel some of the effects of it until the Mercury retrograde's over and you're getting into mid-December. But I think over time, over a 6-month period, you'll see some pretty significant changes, particularly in regards to your relationships. And I say that because of Uranus, which I know you're wondering. Over the last year and a half, Uranus has been going in and out of your 7th house of relationships where things have probably been pretty hit or miss. It's also bringing up possibly a lot of inconsistency in relationships, which is triggering, your Pluto, where you'll go, no, I'll just turn within. It's too much dealing with people. I don't like the inconsistency. And then you get more fixed in your ways and you throw up your stinger. Now, a new moon that is going to have Mercury conjunct means that you're having some probably significant or pivotal download. Like, I like retrogrades involving Mercury on the ascendant, but a cazimi means you're going to have a breakthrough in regards to what you want, your goals, who you are in this like fresh new you. Positive is that it's going to trine Jupiter and also your sun. So it means that you're only going to be able to access this through being brave, getting in touch with your emotions, doing some soul searching, and also possibly being willing to make some changes when it comes to your home, your emotional kind of tendencies, and maybe family related situations. And then you're also going to see this new moon is going to trine Saturn, and you're in the midst of your Saturn return. Wow, that's a lot. Man, at least, in Saturn in the fourth, it sucks. There's always going to be a problem with Saturn in any placement, but when you have Saturn in the fourth house, it's like akin to Saturn in Cancer. Home issues, mom issues, emotional vulnerability issues, dealing with the past, feeling lonely. And even in people who live in a house full of roommates or in a happy marriage or in a beautiful home, when they go through a Saturn transit in the fourth house, things they take time to process, and you have to be a little bit more gentle with yourself emotionally. But my God, this new moon trining your natal Saturn and also transit Saturn is basically saying, this is where you really put yourself first. So you can really gain, I think, especially when it comes to healthier emotions and getting out of the house. Your Saturn's retrograde. One of the worst things you could do is stay home all the time and isolate yourself. Literally. On top of that, it also opposes your Chiron and your Mars. So there is this feeling of getting pulled in two different directions where it's like all work and then you come home and then you probably are like exhausted and just wanting to keep to yourself because, look at Mars is sitting in your 10th house conjunct Chiron. You overwork yourself. Or there's lots of health issues, or there's issues that you have with authority figures. The list goes on. So everything's getting lit up because the new moon sextiles your Chiron. It's also sextiling all your Capricorn, which wants to help you improve your self-esteem, trining your Saturn, helping you get a handle on your emotions, opposing Uranus, which means that, and I've said this to a lot of my Scorpio risings, I'm like, part of what you're learning with this retrograde is you can't change other people. And you also are partially responsible for the reactions that other people are giving you. And that could be with a friend, with a colleague, with a relationship, whatever. That Uranus opposition is people are going to start reacting to how you are communicating, navigating, and if you are reluctant or unwilling to either change, improve yourself, or communicate better. And it'll cause a lot of static. But at the same time, it can also give you the opportunity to go, wait a second, I want relationships. I need to make some changes. I need to open up. And certainly in opposition to Uranus may open the door to, hey, I'm going to have a relationship with an astrologer, right? I'm going to check in with somebody, or I'm going to work with a therapist, or I'm going to connect with a coach, or a partner who's going to give you some feedback, or romantic partners that might be recognizing and acknowledging that, you're maybe not managing things so well. So you can get feedback from outside people. Uranus is going to continue to kind of dance on your ascendant and your descendant with that opposition for another couple months. And I think the positive here is that, like I said, if there's a new moon on the ascendant, just in general, that is the new moon, new you. But making so many aspects in your chart, and especially to your natal Saturn and your natal Sun, the time is now. And obviously Jupiter going through your 8th house is really highlighting where there is some reluctance to change the way that you deal with things emotionally. And there could be some financial stuff that can kind of come up here. I think also, when are you going to be feeling like things are improving? Probably when the Mercury retrograde is over and it's no longer opposing Uranus. So you're looking at closer to the beginning of December. And then you're going to have Mercury come back into your 1st house. And then you're going to feel probably like you can communicate a little bit better once it's out of an opposition with Uranus. So beginning of December is easier when you're coming out of the Mercury retrograde shadow. Mid-December is when things really start to kind of open up. Now, once again, with astrology, there's always something coming. Something I'm not crazy about is in the midst of Sagittarius season, all these planets in Sag are going to start squaring Saturn. So it does mean that you are going to need better self-esteem, money managing, skills, be watching your spending, your expenses, especially in terms of your home and your living situation or family situations and cost of living. And all of this is going to be ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the 8th. So it's going to be about how you're single-handedly orchestrating some of the emotional changes and the way that you behave and you react to things. And, you know, usually if you've got Saturn in the 4th house or moon in the same sign as Saturn, or even looking at your moon conjunct Ceres or Chiron, a separation seems to be a big theme in your life. And I don't know if this is separation from family or isolation, or you feel like the black sheep. Usually Saturn in the 4th house can feel like that. It can also mean that there is some grief or longing because you want something that you cannot have. And I don't know if that's a job or closeness with a mother or a father figure, or feeling like you wish you could just go back home or you could go back to an old situation. So try not to get too nostalgic and stuck in the past. Certainly a lot of this registers more as like a Sagittarius rising, where you're having to deal with home and family karma, and it can feel very heavy, but your Saturn return is almost done. I mean, Saturn's going to go direct. It'll probably start feeling better when Saturn is at least 10 degrees away from your natal Saturn. So you'll start really seeing the shifts of that happening round about spring of next year. But in the background, even while it's still in Pisces, you know, it's trining your Pluto. So it's saying you got to pick yourself up by the bootstraps. You have to be willing to create change and not feel like you're a victim of circumstance or what's happened in the past, or, you know, family related issues. And it's really pushing you to really focus on really exploring some emotional or psychological healing techniques or tendencies, so you can really release some of these emotions and learn how to open up. I mean, Scorpio risings are very private people. Cancer in the 8th house is also, you know, very focused on security, and they're very emotionally sensitive. And then Saturn and the moon in the 4th house is saying the same thing. So it's very obvious to me, just with your natal planets, you know, transits aside, there is a lot of security issues and fear of vulnerability and kind of opening up to people. But really at the core of this is a need to really work on the self-esteem and rebuilding the self a little bit and knowing your worth, so you can start putting yourself out there and kind of opening yourself up to other people. Then as you start seeing some positive things happening with your Venus, you know, relationships can come in, you could meet people. Certainly there could be some kind of positive changes going on with, you know, your social life. And Jupiter coming into conjunction actually with your Jupiter, with your Venus, I think will help. And that's going to not be exact, but it's going to be close in February. So you have to be really on top of this. You're right at the finish line of your Saturn's return. When you're in the middle of it, it feels like hell, especially when you have a very aspected Saturn like you do. But Saturn trine Pluto means that if you want to get out of the past, you have to empower yourself and kind of embrace some of these changes and focus on building something new. And then obviously next year, when you see that Scorpio, you know, new moon turn into a full moon, that'll manifest as some probably pretty big, significant changes, not necessarily in relationship land, but probably more so in terms of your health and your daily habits, what you're eating, how you're treating your body. That kind of stuff is likely going to be really coming full circle. Okay? Enjoy that new moon. You better do something with that, because you're not going to get these aspects again. You'll have Jupiter trine your ascendant, your Pluto every 12 years. But to have Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, you will not see this again. And that makes those of you guys who were born in 95, 96, all that much more under pressure right now, because you have Saturn and Neptune that are, transiting your Saturn at the same time and trining your Pluto. So it's very emotional, but it's also very, very, very helpful, I think, in this regenerative kind of process you're going through. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Mandy. All right, so let me go back to the chat really quick. Let's see. Thanks, Coco. And let's see. Hi, Candace, Singleton, Aries. Thank you. Mercury retrograde, I got you. Good with the good side of Saturn is 4th, working from home. Yeah, that's true. Especially if it's aspecting, if it's positively aspecting your chart ruler. But in this case, I don't know about that. Saturn in opposition to Chiron and Mars, it can mean that too much working from home with a chart like this can actually lead to isolation, and that it can be too much work and being out in the world and then trying to do work from home and then the back and the forth, and it's trying to get you to find a middle ground. So thankfully your Cancer stuff sextiles your Chiron and your Mars, and also your Saturn sextiles your Neptune and your Uranus. But Saturn in the 4th is just so difficult. She'd probably like that though, with the moon in her 4th house. All right, we're gonna move on to Cassandra, and then we have AR, and then we have Vanessa. If you guys want to get in the QR, if you want to get in the queue, scan the QR code. Mercury retrograde. All right, so let's see what's going on with Cassandra. There we go. Sag rising, moon in Virgo, sun in Taurus. Cassandra says, general reading with whatever stands out, intuitive guidance, 4:23:94, 12:14 a.m. in Baltimore. Okay. Well, what stands out to me? Well, let's see here. Let's go and look at what's happening right now. So obviously you're Sag rising. Knowing your rising degree, the first thing I think about is the fact that Saturn and Neptune are squaring your ascendant and your descendant. That's not fun. And simultaneously, it's opposing your moon. So, you know, anything 24 to 26 degrees of the mutable signs, that's going to trigger your chart in a very big way. Also, as you're watching this, you're having your lunar return. So I hope it's a good one for you. But Saturn is going through, for Sagittarius risings, obviously Pisces, so is Neptune. So it's kind of the last stretch, the next couple of months of dealing with like home and family related themes. Technically, your chart registers more as like a Capricorn rising because you've got the Saturn-Neptune transit in your third. So it's more communication stuff, learning, you know, finding ways to better kind of express yourself. And as it's squaring your ascendant and your descendant, it does bring up some relational dilemmas and not knowing what to say or how to say it or how to get the point across. And it's also opposing your moon, which makes it very difficult to make emotional connections, maybe in your case to travel, to relocate, to move. And obviously, you know, Jupiter is your chart ruler and it's hanging out in your 7th retrograde. So let's talk positive. Positive is that you're in a period right now where, yes, the Mercury retrograde has been in your sign, but it's actually about to retrograde back into the house Scorpio that deals with your friends, your allies, your networking opportunities, connecting with people. And in this next week, the Scorpio new moon, the Mercury retrograde, the Cazimi is trining Saturn. So it's trying to get you to be where the people are and focusing on your goals and learning how to kind of get outside of the box, communicate, and be putting yourself out there. It's also going to be trining Jupiter in your 7th house of relationships. So it's almost like the more that you're with other people or setting goals to kind of connect with others, it can actually help improve communication, traveling and studies, and also it can improve relationships. But the key here is Saturn. And it's basically saying that you have to put yourself out there, you have to communicate, you have to be vulnerable, you have to ask questions, you have to be willing to be flexible. And I think the other thing is like, you know, just having Mars and Mercury, you know, meeting and then going back into your 12th house, you're going to feel like December is going to be like a reflection period. Okay, that will happen. Right now, I feel like you can avoid maybe hermiting out too much next month and, you know, being isolated if you're reaching out to friends and saying, hey, you know what, I could use some support, or I want to hang out, or just catching up and asking how they've been, and really focusing on bettering some of your relationships, more so social and platonic, but it can be romantic, it can be family relationships here as well. The other thing that comes to mind is the fact that, you know, this retrograde is going right over your Pluto and right over your North Node. So you might be laughing listening to this going like, I've got friends going through stuff. I don't know if I can really reach out to people because, you know, this, that, and the other, there's a lot of things changing with them. And I don't want to, you know, be a burden, or I don't want to sit on the phone and listen to them complain. And a lot of that is because not only is it going over Pluto where other people's crisis comes up, but it's opposing Uranus, which is right on top of your Venus in the 5th house. And intuitively, I feel like there can be influence that other people can have on what makes you happy, or on your relationships, or whether or not they're negatively, you know, kind of influencing or giving you some very critical feedback, and it can be impacting what makes you happy, what joys you have in your life, who you're dating, what your hobbies are, and try not to get wrapped up in other people's shit. I mean, literally, North Node and Pluto in the 11th house. I'm sure you have some really kick-ass friends, but I'm also sure that it's become maybe a little bit more obvious to you, or other people aren't going to celebrate some of your happiness or some of your, you know, positive things, or that, you know, sometimes they can like rain on parades. And I'm not saying you have to cut people off, but recognizing and realizing where other people's dramas, you may not necessarily want to have it around you, and it may negatively impact, you know, where you're focusing, where you're going, right? So there could be some issues there. The other thing that I am looking at is anything that's going on with your natal Jupiter as well. And so, today Venus is conjunct your Jupiter. You're going to have that maybe until about tomorrow. So that could be good for a friend being there in need. That could be good for some positive career related things that are kind of happening because it's also happening in your 10th house. It's kind of a fading aspect. But as we get into the new moon, right here, when you have that new moon, Mercury is going to be retrograde in conjunction to Pluto. So I think maybe you can get some positive, kind of advice from a friend, or maybe there is a sense of a reconnection, or if you had a falling out with someone, you can make up with them or you can see them again. There is possibility for that. But with Saturn retrograde, there can almost be like this Mexican standoff going on where you're like, well, I'm not calling them, they have to call me. And I'm not making an effort, they need to make an effort to see me. And I would say don't be rigid. Try to extend an olive branch and connect and communicate with people. And you may find that people are more forgiving and more, kind of lenient and let you know that they miss you, that they want to talk to you, or they wonder where you've been, which could open the door to having, better support and better kind of communication as, November kind of bleeds into December. Pluto's been squaring your sun. And so that's something else I'm kind of looking at. Is obviously, Sun-Pluto squares, they do bring up some challenges revolving around ego, problems with men in particular. So with Pluto squaring your sun, issues regarding your will or your willingness to change and how that's impacting relationships with boyfriends, father figures, anything revolving around also resources and like pressure to make some changes with your home or your living situation. All the while, Uranus is right on top of your Venus. So to me, man, Mercury retrograde, not communicating well with other people, Pluto in your first house squaring your sun, where you're like, I'm sick of, having these power struggles with other people. And then Uranus on your Venus, where there's a lot of inconsistency, is like, there's a lot of things going on at one time. Thankfully, as we get into next year, you're no longer going to have Pluto squaring your sun. It's going to start to ease up next year. Uranus will be off of your Venus. Likely your love life will stabilize. But I think a lot of what's happening with the Mercury retrograde starting in your sign is like, rather than, wigging out and freaking out and, trying to navigate changes going on in relationships or changes going on at work, which are happening with eclipses in your 10th house, it's more about what am I going to do about it? Like Scorpio and Sagittarius risings, I love you guys, but you have to stop reacting to other people. And that's a lot of the Uranus opposition. So for Sagittarius, it's, how you're reacting to changes going on at work or with your health. For Scorpio risings, how you're getting in a fuss about something, and then, your partner gets triggered and suddenly they get fed up about something and you're like, what? I didn't do anything. So much of the retrograde is about whether or not you guys are self-aware. And that could not necessarily mean you're yelling or barking at people. It could mean that you're just scorping out or freaking out because you're resistant to change. So a lot of it's about becoming more self-aware in how you're communicating and connecting with people. And in your case, being a Sag rising, as you get into December, that's going to be incredibly important because these planets are then going to go through your 12th house. They're going to start squaring your planets transiting in your 3rd, and there could be crickets. Like it could be, I think it'll be quiet for a lot of like late degree Sagittarius risings or Capricorn risings, and there's going to be a lot of, why isn't nobody calling? Why am I not hearing from anybody? What's going on? Because you had your opportunity to connect in November with people, and if you choose not to, then this is going to be a more kind of quiet, kind of private period. But it'll definitely change in January when planets hit your ascendant. Just know that you have, placements here and also here where Saturn and Neptune is going to square your moon, and it's also going to square your Saturn and your Neptune, and it's going to be about whether or not, you're going to make changes in a professional manner, and if you're going to be also making changes on your home when it comes to your home life or your family. And a lot of Sag risings are feeling like work is unpredictable, it's not consistent, or I'm not fulfilled, or I want to walk away, but I've got home and family things going on, and I've got responsibilities, and you can get quite flustered. So you need to pace yourself really as you're getting into December. Don't be lashing out or making any like sudden decisions. And the Mercury retrograde is teaching you the same thing because it's about how you're kind of expressing yourself professionally and dealing with partnerships. So some of you guys started the retrograde with being like, okay, I just want to keep to myself and I need to kind of be quiet for a little bit. And then Mercury got into Sag, and then you guys probably lashed out a little bit or you got frustrated, and now it's retrograding back. So now you're reflecting on, why am I not working well with other people? What's going on with relationships? What's happening at work? And I'm not saying you're the problem, but certainly you can't change other people. You can only change the way that you act, the way you think, the way that you communicate, and how you react to things. So there is definitely a need to really focus on that. I would be super self-aware, take time when you need to, and know that things are really going to start to kind of ease up as you're getting closer to next year, when Saturn is no longer and Neptune is no longer like just attacking your chart, right? So hopefully that's helpful for you, Cassandra. Definitely give me some feedback and let me know what happens. I got you, Coco. I got you in the list. So we'll take Coco, and then we're going to have AR, and then we're going to have Vanessa. And last call is coming up. So if you guys want to get in the queue, I recommend getting in now. And let me see if I can go and find your question here. And I'm assuming it's synastry, but let's see what your order says. There we go. So it's you and Gomez. Okay, let me pull that up. All right, Coco's a Pisces rising, Sun in Sag, Moon in Capricorn, and it looks like Gomez is a Scorpio rising. She's probably like laughing as she's like listening to some of this stuff. Scorpio rising with Sun in Cancer, Moon in Taurus. Okay, so all this Scorpio rising stuff I've been talking about, that's what Gomez is going through. People are asking about who's on the list, so pay attention. When I say your name, that means that I've got you. Allison, Vanessa, Adriana, Ascended Truth, Jan, Meredith, Emily, Kristen, Kara, and Bachland. Am I saying that right? Oh, Caroline. So if you hear your name, I have you in the queue. Obviously, it's going to be just a little bit before we get to the readings. But if you guys have to come back, you can come back. I'll leave this up, but I've got you, and we will be calling last calls. So if you guys want to get in, get your reading. All right, Coco, let's see what's going on with you and Gomez. So for Coco Synastry, I'm still talking to this demon of a man on and off. Physically addicted to each other, but I want more of a serious commitment. He seems to want to have the perks and benefits of a partner without the responsibility. Is there any hope? Before I even get to your transits, I want to, no, we'll start with you. So, okay, synastry is one thing. Synastry is how you guys relate to each other. And you could have really positive aspects in synastry between your Mars or your Venus or your Mercury and your Moon, and it could be a good match, but you guys could be separately going through some transits that could kind of be rocky. And I would say, I'm not one to give slack or cut slack, but we can cut slack for Scorpio risings right now, for now, until they get to the new moon, and then it's on them. So in your chart, Saturn is now retrograding back to your ascendant, which in itself was going to make you go, is it just me? Am I getting what I want? In any capacity. And it's about your boundaries and a reevaluation of your boundaries and whether or not you like feeling alone or feeling detached and whether or not you're getting what you need. Right now, I was like, why do things feel so weird? The moon's in Virgo. It's opposing Saturn and Neptune. So there's a lot of people going, why isn't this working? You know, when is it going to work? And when are things going to come together? And you should be feeling that right now. Like that sense of distance, because the moon is in opposition to Saturn. And usually this is very relational when it goes through your 7th house, but not right now, not when it's squaring all the stuff, squaring your Mercury. So you need something positive Mercury-wise to figure out relationships. Well, Mercury's retrograde. It's retrograding from your 9th house of what could be to the 8th house of let's get to the bottom of this. And Mercury's been conjunct Mars, so it's been a really sexy time. Obviously, it's been also conjunct Pluto, so it's brought a lot of passion and a lot of intensity because Mercury rules relationships. But something I want you to think about is this Mercury retrograde stops short of your sun, so it's about not going into a public relationship. It's been reevaluating, is it going to go there? And also, Mercury and Mars are heading for your natal Mercury here in the next month. My thought is, because Sagittarius season is the halfway point between the eclipses that we had in September and the eclipses we will have in March, that there is a whole wave of things coming in Sagittarius season, right around the end of Sagittarius season as we approach the holidays, where people are going to go, what's going on? Because it's the halfway point. And we're going to have Mercury, Mars, the Sun, and Venus coming in, and it's going to square Saturn and Neptune. And really what that tells me is as we're getting into December and January, you want to feel like relationships are taking place on a public stage. You want recognition. You want to see growth. You want to see growth in your career as well, I'm sure. And remember that the South Node is connected to Mercury. So as Mercury goes retrograde, You're like, I'm in my feelings, what's happening? And you probably don't like how you've been feeling, even though there's been some perks. And as Mercury is trining Saturn and Neptune, you're like, this is a very sexual relationship. You know, do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I need to be better about or more firm when it comes to my boundaries and my communication? Especially if what you want, Jupiter in the 5th, is true love, right? If you want to build a relationship with someone, if you want to see love grow, if you're hoping to get to a point where you can have a relationship where you can be committed, or it could lead to living together, having a family, or anything like that. Yeah, I don't blame you. Nobody likes Mercury retrograde when, in general, but especially when it's going retrograde in the water houses. So in the 12th house, the 8th house, the 4th house, it's very emotional. And that's where Mercury has been retrograding for you. So it's bringing up all of this, oh my God, am I giving myself away? Is this making me vulnerable? What is being taken from me? What am I getting in exchange? And I feel inclined to tell you, you have to be very selfish right now because Saturn's in your sign. So with Saturn in your first house, you need to be so completely crystal clear about your goals, which I think are going to come online more at the end of the month when Saturn goes direct. And it will then start trining Jupiter, where you're going to go, well, I know what I want, and I want love, and I want, you know, to feel like I'm growing or building something with someone. And that Mercury retrograde could be the negotiation process. And also the Cazimi that's coming up as well. That's a part of the new moon. You know, even though the Cazimi is positive because it's the halfway point through the Mercury retrograde, and whatever feels wonky or has been off, we start to figure out, well, what do we need to fix? But it's also about something dying, right? So if you happen to be a Pisces rising, or if you happen to be a Sagittarius rising, you know, your 7th house lord is going to die in the house of the sun, which means you're basically going to realize around the new moon, this is great and everything, but I want more. I want more depth. I want more closeness. I don't want to be in the dark. And it will oppose Uranus in the 2nd, which means, you know, even though it's going against everything that you want physically, you want the physical pleasure and the spontaneity and the excitement, it's lacking that level of knowing that you're actually having safety and security that you're building with another person. And so it's possible that the new moon is leading to you having a heart-to-heart with someone because Mercury and the sun trine Saturn and Neptune, where you're like, I don't like the way I'm feeling, which is normal with Saturn and Neptune on your ascendant. Now it's getting ready to give you the opportunity to talk about it. Does that mean that you do it on the new moon? No, but you may start exercising things where you're creating better boundaries and you're not going to let him have the ice cream for free, right? I think that's really what this is about what you're kind of giving up and whether or not you're feeling emotionally fulfilled. So then Mercury goes direct. And when it goes direct, it's going to go into conjunction right around the time it's going to go into conjunction with Venus. So I'm assuming, let's say the 19th through the 26th is probably when there's going to be this heart-to-heart that's like, yeah, we got to make some changes with this. Like, I'm not feeling so secure, even though it's not what you want. And yes, Scorpio is like ripping the bandage off. And then Mercury will go direct. And maybe, you know, because of those changes you made at the end of November, you see if he's going to show up in a way that's going to be more about building the relationship. As Mercury starts trining Saturn, does he hear you? Is he acknowledging your emotions? Does he see that there is this sense of cautiousness and kind of holding back a little bit, right? I mean, that's how I see it at least. And then maybe you can go from there and see what's going to happen. But still, Mercury and Mars are going to conjunct. So you're looking for somebody who is really taking you out, doing things, focusing on, you know, being a part of a relationship and kind of showing you off. And we'll see if he comes through. And you still have eclipses that are going to happen in your 7th house. And when Saturn and Neptune are on your ascendant, it's going to feel harder to bring relationships in. But still, you know. And she says, I don't know. I like him eating ice cream. I just want him to franchise the truck. And that's the thing. Saturn means business. So rather than leaving you in the dark and being like, okay, I'm just going to go along with this until he figures it out, I would be like, no, I'm not going to make this so easy. It doesn't mean you're playing hard to get, but that you're listening to your emotions and you're protecting your feelings. What you also need to know is that, yeah, he's a Scorpio rising. You know, he's a Scorpio rising, and the retrograde, the new moon, is all happening right on his ascendant, which means there is a lot of back and forth going on regarding how he communicates and expresses himself. And guess what? Mercury rules the 8th house of sex. So there can be a cutoff or a change in terms of what's going on, you know, with a sexual relationship. And then also there is going to be some oppositions to Uranus, which means a partner is going to get a little fickle or be a little kind of edgy or kind of touchy about his communication, his sexual habits, the way that he's showing up. And like, yeah, Mercury and Mars have been on his ascendant. Like likely it's been on like Donkey Kong. Great, awesome. But I look at Venus to see how is his partner feeling. Oh, Venus is going through the 12th house. Something is not sitting right with her. She feels like there are some issues regarding, the relationship habits. That's your 6th in terms of his chart. And it's conjuncting Pluto. And it looks like as it conjuncts Pluto, sure, that could be a really sexy connection, but it can also mean there is a sense of a girlfriend or a partner getting ready to have a conversation with him. Oh, I don't know, around the 18th of November, when the moon and Venus hit Pluto in a dark moon and they go, hey, surprise, guess what? I'm not liking this very much. And it's going to make a full moon in the chart. And it's about somebody giving him feedback, giving him insight about, hey, this is how you're acting, but how do you actually feel? And Mercury will retrograde conjunct the sun. He's going to feel like, well, I want to do what I want to do. And, why are you reacting this way? Or this is just the way that I am. And I'd be like, nope, no dice. Even though the sun, Mercury, and Mars is very powerful in his first house, it's creating a full moon. And the moon is going to be stronger in Taurus. So it's going to be about, yes, pleasure is good, but I need more. And then finally, the new moon hits with a Mercury Cazimi, and that makes me feel like inevitably there is going to be a pretty significant change in his sex life or a really deep, involved, intimate conversation about somebody needing more from him. And then Venus will sit on the ascendant, which means likely a female friend will come around more when Venus is sitting on the ascendant. In theory, that's going to be around the end of November, but it's still in opposition to Uranus. So you'll be around, but there is a sense of maybe him trying to be really charming and trying to kind of win you over, but Uranus is still doing his thing on the descendant, and it's at a Gemini degree. So it's really bringing up issues not regarding other people, but communication and whether or not a person who he's kind of involved with is feeling like he's communicating effectively. And all the while, Pluto is in opposition to his Venus. So there is definitely a partner needing more, and they need to be, I think, kind of romanced more versus, just looking at the relationship as a physical connection. So he doesn't get a pass after the new moon, in my mind. I feel like it's in your chart that this is supposed to happen. It's in his chart that he needs maybe a subtle kind of like wake-up call that's like, hey, is this ever going to progress into something else? And like, look, he's super sexual. Scorpio rising, Pluto technically on his whole sign first, sun in the 8th house, it's conjunct Chiron. And my concern would be, what happens, when all of these planets come into Aquarius at the beginning of the year and they oppose Pluto. If he's acting very selfishly, I don't think you're going to be totally thrilled if this is still going on in February or March of next year, personally. And likely there is some reluctance to, wanting to be in a committed relationship while Uranus is sitting in his 7th house. But that'll start to subside as you're getting into next year. So the synastry, it's very like two-dimensional. It's not really going to do anything. It just talks a little bit about how you guys connect. And certainly Mars on the ascendant is good for synastry. Jupiter on the sun is good for sexual connection, optimism. Your moons trine each other. Your Venuses trine each other. At least for the moons, but you guys have a Sun, Mercury, and a Mercury-Jupiter opposition. So he has partners that are very chatty and they need security and they need to connect intimately, while he is Mars, and Mars is technically in the 9th, so he likes freedom. So the composite chart is actually going to tell us more like what is going to happen. And together you guys are a Capricorn rising with a sun in Virgo, and your moon is in Pisces. So you guys are a full moon in Pisces. Look at this. You've had eclipses here recently. So if we go back in time and we look at the eclipse that you had around September the 7th, that was bringing up a lot of relational themes. And then you also had an eclipse there that happened again around the 21st, which was right on your Mars. Lots of sex, obviously. But the opposition to Saturn and Neptune is whether or not somebody feels secure and emotionally fulfilled by the relationship. And I think that that's still coming up, and it's going to come up in Sagittarius season. This is a chart that's also ruled by Saturn. So with Saturn sitting on the moon, there's some emotional disconnect, and it's starting to oppose your sun and your Mars, which is like, okay, great, sun and Mars and Virgo, there's sex, there's this connection, awesome. But what about the emotions? What about the feelings? What about all of this like Pisces stuff? Mercury in opposition to the sun is not great for communication. Moon in opposition to Mars can be really sexually charged, but similarly, there can be some issues revolving around what we do physically, earth sign, what we need emotionally, Pisces. He came back. Okay. So you're probably still going to be dealing with some of this stuff, like until, you know, the nodes are out of Virgo and Pisces. You're probably also going to be dealing with some of this stuff come the beginning of the year. Like I could see in the charts that I would give it till about February. We'll look at the eclipse that's going to happen in February. It's right on your composite north node. So that means if both parties aren't evolving and changing, it could send you on your separate paths. Probably sometime the end of February going into March when you have the Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and then you're going to have the lunar eclipse that's going to be in Virgo, ruled by Mercury. Are we not wanting the same things? I mean, if you hang around and you wait, come February, you know, March, you guys are going to hash it out and talk about it, but I'd be like, get ahead of the curve now, make it easier now. So that way, you know, and unfortunately, one of the only ways to get through to a Scorpio rising, especially if they have Pluto, is sex. And I'm not saying using that against him, but that's certainly going to make it very clear if that's his way of connecting and feeling emotionally secure, like his sun's at 8 degrees in Cancer in the 8th, is being like, no, like I need it all. I don't want just one thing without the other. There has to be a sense of that coming together completely. But yeah, I think that things can improve when Uranus is off of his descendant, and also if you're a little bit more firm and recognizing your emotions and feeling more comfortable and confident vocalizing that, being like, look, I'm not pressuring you, but I got to do what I got to do to look out for me. And even though I really love this, I don't want to be 6 months down the road and still be doing back and forth with you and not really knowing where this is going. So there's an opportunity for a lot of insight that he can get right now that can really help sprout some of the new moon intentions on his ascendant, where he needs to be more mindful of how he's thinking and how he's feeling versus how he's acting. And if he's not feeling a certain way, then he needs to, you know, have a conversation with somebody about it and not be confusing everything with like the sexual connection, right? Hopefully that's helpful in giving you some insight, Coco. It's so much more complicated than just looking at somebody's transits or, you know, just looking at what's going on with the synastry. You have to take both charts into consideration and see what both parties are going through. And likely what you'll see is that what your chart says you're supposed to be going through, what their chart says they're supposed to be going through, you guys have come together to work through that. But your synastry is actually pretty positive. So I think there's a lot of potential here. But man, Scorpio rising with Cancer placements in the 8th, they can be a little clingy, a little manipulative, not intentionally, but just because they want that closeness, they want that security, but they don't want to open up themselves, right? Anyway, I hope that's helpful. We did close the readings, so I'm going to update the chart in just a second because I'm going to have to put some notes in. So I'm going to keep working through my list of who I have. We're going to take AR and then Vanessa. And we've got another synastry reading, so this will be fun. And you guys are you're not going to be, I mean, you're going to be surprised, but you're not going to be surprised. A lot of these people are Scorpio risings that we're dealing with. It's kind of like, what's going on with these Scorpio risings? So let's pull this up. So we're going to be, my goodness, where is it? AR. I changed your name for if you wanted privacy, and now I can't find you. Let me see if I can find this. AR. Sorry guys, I'm having to dig through all of my charts here. Where is it? I know I saw this earlier. Hey, I did answer your question, Enchanted. If you go back through the reading, you'll be able to find it. Man, I should not have changed your name, Allison. Hey, Allison, can you send me your info again so I can plug it back into the chart? I apologize. I changed it because I figured you wouldn't want your name because I thought it was AR last time and I should have just left it alone. My bad. Let's see, is it in here? So I have Z's info, but I don't have yours, Allison, which I know is crazy. I've had your chart forever. Thank you. May 8th, 1979, and that was at 10:07. All right, thank you for your patience. Of course. Okay, so we've got Allison, Cancer rising, Sun in Taurus, Moon in Libra. And then we've got Z, Scorpio rising, Sun in Sag, and the Moon is in Pisces. Okay, so Allison says, is the Sag coming back around? And if so, when? He's watching and liking my Instagram, but it's not the same as returning with intention and making a plan. This is longer than I imagined it would be. I guess the big question is he done and too cowardly to say so, or actually coming back? Limbo sucks. So obviously in your chart, we're always going to focus on what's going on with Saturn for relationships. And you've got Saturn retrograde in the 3rd house. So we've talked about in the past, you know, meeting people while you're walking through the neighborhood, meeting people through work, or while you're in transit. But there's some stuff going on with Saturn right now. So Saturn is actually currently in Pisces. At the end of this month, it's going to go direct. So there is a possibility with Saturn going direct that there could be some significant change in the direction of where a relationship is going. So that's going to start on the 27th. And the moon, about a day or two later, which is you, is going to conjunct Saturn, which is them, and it's going to trine Jupiter, which means you're going to get your response. You're going to find out what's going on probably, if not sooner, right around that time, 26th, 27th, 28th. The other thing is that the South Node now is continuing to move through Virgo. And eventually, as we're getting into the new year, it's going to conjunct your Saturn at a 7, and it can be starting to heat up now because now the South Node is within 7 degrees range of your Saturn, and it's retrograde. So it's like where relationships can fall off due to lack of connection or communication. It can also mean that there are people who are kind of hovering and lingering around, looking at media, 3rd house, but not really showing up in a physical, tangible way, right? Saturn retrograde. So the Mercury retrograde that's happening currently is taking place in your natal 5th. And Mercury represents communication, where there's been a change in direction with communication with romantic partners. It's driving you crazy because it's in opposition to your sun, and it's making you kind of go back and forth as to whether or not you're feeling chosen or wanted. But the positive is that we still haven't seen the new moon. We still have yet to see some of the trines to Jupiter again and Saturn again. And when Mercury retrogrades back into Scorpio, it can mean that you're going back and forth with like a Scorpio type of individual, which we know he's a Scorpio rising. And it can give you more insight and make you recognize or realize where or why there's been delays. And simultaneously, it's going to trine Saturn, which means that it's going to give you more clarity as to whether or not somebody is ready for love, mature, ready to commit, or if it's time to move on. So annoying, yes, but Mercury retrogrades in aspect to not only Jupiter in your sign is going to make you recognize and realize, you know, what changes you need to make yourself feel happy in dating. But the trine to Saturn could open the door to there being better kind of communication and clarity, which could actually improve relationships, which I think it would be connected to traveling. So being like, am I going to try to go there and see him? Is he going to try to go there and see me? So let's see what that looks like in terms of his transits. Obviously, you know, Scorpio rising, he's got his Sun, Mercury, and Juno, and all these other placements in Sag. So from the perspective of just a Scorpio rising, you know, this Mercury retrograde is going basically over his Sun, okay? So it's more career related. And it's retrograding back into the 1st house of self. And it is then coming into contact, obviously, with, you know, Mercury and the Sun. So it's literally another Scorpio rising that's going through probably a really turbulent time in terms of trying to figure out just exactly how to better communicate and express himself. Hold on a second. His birthday is the 27th. Yeah, November 27th, 1990. That's what I had. I'm just looking at the transits on his chart. Now, you know, you may not see a lot of opportunity for togetherness until maybe Venus is on his ascendant, because that's bringing forth a partner. And the moon's going to be conjunct there. So it does mean there could be a sense of him being in town in the same location or part of the city as a partner, or vice versa, which could allow you guys to connect, because this is going to trine his 5th house of romance. And then Venus will also come into conjunction with Mercury, which means he's going to have to confront a partner about an intimacy issue, finally come clean or disclose what he's been going through, or why he's been distant, or why there's been some issues in communicating. Even the Mercury retrograde, when it started conjunct Mars right on his sun in opposition to his natal Mars in the 7th. So it tells me lots of work stress, doing too much, not knowing how to communicate, delays in communication, and also keeping some kind of space from a potential partner. I mean, literally all of these things apply. Is there a possibility that there could be better communication when you see, Mercury and Venus conjunct? Yes, I think so. But I mean, this is getting to later in the month. So Mercury conjunct Venus could be another one, which would be around the 24th. And then you're going to see Venus come into an opposition with Uranus, which could mean that there is some strife in making up his mind or making some decisions about a relationship, particularly a Taurus, which could definitely be a make or break time. And that's going to be more around November 29th. In the background, you have got Saturn going over his moon in Pisces in the 5th. So, okay, dating an older woman, very Saturn in the 5th, Saturn conjunct the moon, limitations emotionally, being cold, holding himself back, finding it difficult to be happy, to be available. He could be really also consumed with getting over past relationship issues. There could be a sense of him being depressed with Saturn and Neptune on his moon and not feeling really open when it comes to, romance and connecting with people. It could also mean that he's feeling that there's some kind of obligation that's 5th house related. So things regarding children or dealing with kids or, issues back and forth, certainly dealing with another person, and whether or not he's really clearing out the past and making himself emotionally and physically ready for a relationship. You see, the problem that I have with all of this is that if we zoom out, right? If we look at his natal chart, he's got the sun in the 1st, which is strong in Sag, which is I'm going to do what I want to do. And it opposes Mars in the 7th, and it's retrograde. So it means that there will be times where he will pull out of relationships, literally Mars, and he'll cut ties with relationships because he thinks that it's going to be best for him, or he has to focus on money, or there's some other thing that's kind of like consuming his time. And then when there is the separation, then there can be a sense of him coming back or still kind of dealing with the past. And relationships are always going to have issues in this chart with Mars in opposition to the sun. That means that his own ego, his own goals, or his own career creates breaks and patterns with relationships. And likely after the break, or if somebody leaves, he's going to go, wait a second, where did you go? So we need to see something positive going on with Mars and Venus for there to be a connection. So possibly, the earliest I would say there could be a connection would be the 18th or the 19th. But I'm also looking at when Mercury is making aspects or Venus is making aspects. So you're going to see Venus on his sun, which could definitely be about having a woman over, kind of visiting at her house or his house maybe. Home turf is 4 degrees around early December on the 4th. And then Mercury is going to come back into Sagittarius. And that's about really explaining to other people, like where he's been and what he's been dealing with, either health-wise or schedule-wise, or like where he's been kind of like wigging out. There's no real excuse for it, personally. There's no excuse for it. I look at all of the squares that are going on in December from his 2nd house to his 5th, and I feel like work, money is consuming, and there is a sense of him pulling out of something and not communicating well because he either doesn't know how to be vulnerable or he doesn't know how to really show up. And there is a very good likelihood, either at the end of November or sometime in December, that he's going to come back around and be like, oh yeah, I had stuff going on, but it's clearly pissing off a Taurus with the oppositions to Uranus. He's keeping somebody at a distance. So the real question is he going to come back? And that's going to be more, I think, something you're going to see through the composite chart. So together, you guys are a Virgo rising, Sun in Aquarius, and your moon is in Capricorn. So this is a chart very much affected by Mercury retrogrades because Mercury rules Virgo. So your natal Mercury is conjunct the Sun, so that can mean there's some blind spots discussing work, patterns, habits, scheduling, yada yada, which also squares the North and the South node. It also squares Saturn, so there's some communication issues in this chart. However, what I do like is that the Sun, Mercury, Juno, and Venus are all in the same sign. So it means that if people are willing to communicate and talk about their schedule or when they're available or what they're up for or when they can connect and really work on themselves, both of you guys, to be able to, create a life where you guys can be in service to each other and help each other grow, it can be a really great partnership. The problem is that you're getting hit with some nasty astrology, not only because Mercury is retrograde, so it's throwing this off a bit, but also at the same time, you're also seeing that the South Node is going through your ascendant. So it's saying both parties are feeling disconnected right now because of health, work changes, scheduling changes, and something's out of balance. And the North Node's in the 7th, Saturn's about to go direct, Neptune's about to go direct, and you're going to see this new moon is going to be happening in your 3rd house of communication, trining Saturn and Neptune. So literally the 18th, 19th, 20th, that new moon is a good time to connect and be like, hey, where have you been? What's going on? It will also trine Jupiter, so it can give you the opportunity to kind of connect and, kind of talk in a friendly manner, not really making it so much focus on the relationship, but are you okay? What has happened? And you're going to see when there's more positive aspects involving Jupiter, I think that a relationship can improve. Certainly Saturn and Neptune and Jupiter are all in a trine right now, but I think this would be more the connection is through extended friends or people who you know, or more social media. He's getting his information through social media. And the Mercury retrograde can mean that, okay, you guys haven't been communicating very well, but it can give you the opportunity to get things back on track. And I would maybe watch for an opportunity to connect or communicate 18th, 19th. And then Saturn's going to go direct at the end of the month. And it looks like the moon's going to meet with Saturn. So there could even be some clarity coming up on the 29th. And then you're going to see Mercury come into a trine with Saturn, where you're going to have a better defined idea as to what you guys are doing by about December 7th. So it could be very touch and go basically for the rest of November. I think communication can improve in December, but there's nothing here that's saying that it's definitively over. But what will happen is with the eclipses coming up next year, you're going to have an eclipse that's going to be right on your sun, which is the ruler of the 12th house. That means that whether you guys are talking or not, this has a timeline. It means that if people are not willing to get outside of their comfort zone or communicate better or work on themselves or improve, their schedule or their working situation or their life situation, it's going to be increasingly more difficult with this eclipse to make time for each other or be willing to be patient for other people to evolve and change. If you guys are in a good place come this time, I think you're going to find that scheduling issues and communication or job-related scheduling challenges can come up. And I know for him, this is all going to be, taking place, I think, primarily in his 4th house at that time. So it can be more changes going on with, his home or his living situation. Yeah, right on the 4th house cusp. So that'll be a time where even if you guys are in a good place, he's like, well, I'm having to move, or this is changing with my home or my family situation. And it's going to rock this chart because it's squaring Uranus. So you're not going to be willing to wait. Intuitively, going off of your transits, I would be more focused, if this were me, on the fact that in the coming year, the South Node is going to hit your Saturn. And that can both bring a relationship, take a relationship out of your life, but it can also bring somebody back from the past. So if you have a disconnection and you're not communicating very well, there's a very good likelihood when the South Node hits your Saturn in the spring, like March and April, and there's retrogrades going on, that somebody is reaching back out to you. You're getting him at a time where Saturn and Neptune on his moon means he doesn't really know how to connect intimately or romantically. He's isolating himself. And hopefully, and once again, if you're with a Scorpio rising or if you're dealing with Scorpio rising issues, so much of the oppositions to Uranus and the Mercury retrograde is about people giving you feedback, being like, the way you're communicating or the way you're handling things or you're bottling things up or you're not telling me what's going on, that's part of the process. They actually need the feedback, especially if you have Taurus placements. So it can be good to check on him and be like, hey, you know, I respect with what you said, giving you space, figuring things out. But at the same time, it's like, are you okay? What's going on? Like, that's, maybe it's just me, but I feel like if you have the energy and the wherewithal to go through somebody's social media, but you can't pick up the phone or call or send a text, like that's a them problem. Like that's either them detaching or disassociating. And in your chart, this is going to be something that you're going to have to deal with inevitably, whether it's him or it's another person. So you can get ahead of it now, and you could basically go, look, I'm going to create better boundaries, you know, South Node on your Saturn, about who can view my stuff or who can communicate and connect with me or who I am going to be responding to. Positive also is that you've got a really strong energy coming up at the end of December going into January in your 7th house, where it's going to be very relationship oriented. Mars and Venus are going to meet in the 7th house, and they're going to conjunct each other. There's going to be a cazimi with the sun. So something is ending and something new is beginning. And while that happens, it's all coming into sextiles with Saturn. So the right conversation, certainly in end of November going into December, can pave the way for a much stronger relationship or union, especially come the beginning of the year. All of that's also opposing Jupiter, which means people have to work with you, with your schedule, with what you're available to do. They have to be willing to come to you. You can't be too willing to run around and do things for other people. And, you know, once that Saturn transit with the South Node is done, I mean, I know there's going to be an eclipse near there. So there's one that's close to that in March, and then there's going to be one in opposition to that in August, and then even at the beginning of 2027 you have a Mars retrograde over Saturn. I mean, get ahead of this now. If this is somebody who you're really compatible with, which I know we've talked about and I can see, you know, the connection, I think it's important to really have a conversation and be like, look, I'm interested, but I'm also not feeling good. And his Chiron sits right on your ascendant, and his South Node sits on your Jupiter, so he can feel really good, but it can also kind of suck all of the joy out of situations when they're gone. And his North Node and his Saturn's on your descendant, so your lesson in dealing with him is not feeling wounded or rejected, learning to create better boundaries when it comes to relationships, and his Pluto opposes your Sun. So there is also this really strong attraction, both, you know, physically, but also I think just it's tangible. Like some of the chemistry that you guys have, it's so good that it's when it's good, but when it's separate, it's like you can't handle it. And it can bring up a lot of issues revolving around whether or not there's some bad habits that can come up for you, you know, in terms of dating or sleeping with other people, because you're just like, I can't deal with this. I just have to move on. And it can be a really difficult person to kind of let go of. But I don't think this is it. I don't think this is done yet. And I'm only giving him some slack because of the Mercury retrograde. But in the end, I know that it wouldn't matter if it was Mercury retrograde or not. Saturn and Neptune on his moon is going to make it very difficult for him to travel, connect, or feel optimistic about dating or relationships. And hopefully with Saturn moving away from that, especially come the beginning of the year, that's going to start to kind of improve. Even then, he's got stuff going on. Uranus is going to like come in conjunction with his Mars next year. I mean, there's going to be a lot of drama in a relationship, especially in dealing with past relationships, meeting present ones. And it'll oppose his Sun. So he's going to have job changes, he's going to have housing changes, he's going to have relationship changes. And if all that Sagittarius is in his whole sign second, he's very reluctant to change. He's very money focused and he's very stability driven. And if he is resisting relationships coming into his life that can help improve his situations, he's going to have lots of static back and forth with anybody. So know that anybody who he's with next year is not necessarily going to be a cakewalk. There will be probably some you know, needs to have discussions about, you know, moving and changes in living situations and financial situations. And like, if his work life or his family life or responsibility for kids is what's draining his energy, people are going to be like, why are you even getting involved with me? Like, you don't have the time, or you're not making the effort. And he'll keep getting that same feedback. So you may be the first person to actually give that to him, right? Let me know about some of the dates and what happens. Obviously, like I said, I'll follow up with you, but pay attention to the timeline, because right around the new moon is when there's an opportunity for you to be able to set things straight, and he may actually benefit from hearing that feedback. All right, so we've got up next is Vanessa. All right, let's see. Did I plug her in here? Take a look. Thank you guys for your patience. Readings are now closed, so if I missed you, I'll catch you guys back here next week. And let's plug Vanessa in. I could have sworn that I did, but maybe not. Hey girl, hey. All right, so that was 113.91. Yeah, I have you here. I know you were saved. Oh, there we go. All right, Vanessa. No worries. I hope that was helpful, Enchanted. All right, so Vanessa is a Cancer rising with a sun in Capricorn and a moon in Sagittarius. She says, the relationship with my dad has been a mess for several years. I don't trust that he's ready to fix our relationship. I feel like I need to keep the distance, looking for guidance and clarity. Thank you. All right. So being that you're a Cancer rising, your fourth house Placidus, okay, so it's not whole sign, I'm looking at Placidus, is Virgo. And the South Node is going through the fourth house right now, and it's going to continue that way for the next couple months, where there is a clearing, a maybe distancing, removing, unearthing of any dysfunctional or unhealthy relationship habits. Mercury also rules your fourth house. So the Mercury retrograde that's going on right now, where it's retrograding in your sixth house, where you're recognizing and realizing that it may not be the right timing for healing relationship wounds, or that there may be some unhealthy relationship or family dynamics, makes sense to me. The other thing is that if you look at your natal Mercury, let me take the transits off here for a second because I feel like what's his name from Always Sunny, just like pointing all over things. If you look at your fourth house ruler, Mercury, it's at 29 degrees conjunct the moon. So you're the moon, family is Mercury, sixth house is problems, it's issues, things that require work and, you know, cleaning up and fixing and caretaking. And maybe in the past, you have been the fixer. Maybe you have been the person who takes care of family and parents, and you're willing to overlook some of the flaws and you're willing to take some of that stuff on. But it's brought up for you a lot of mental distress, right? Emotional and mental distress, because it's at 29. That's a critical degree. Drama. And this is about the drama revolving around other people's habits, their mental health habits, their addiction habits, their health problems. And what's happening and what's been happening this year is Saturn and Neptune came in together in Pisces, and it's been squaring your Saturn and your Neptune. And to me, in the 10th house, that's a big grow up period. That's you going, just because I can doesn't mean I should. Just because I always have doesn't mean I'm going to continue. And also this recognition and realization maybe that you have to be responsible for yourself. You have to look out for yourself, your career. Learning to be compassionate with Saturn in Neptune and Pisces, but also being firm with your boundaries. And this is a opening square to Saturn, to your moon and Mercury. So it's really you finally coming out and saying, I don't think it's time, you know, this isn't my mess to fix or to clean up. Maybe you have some things to kind of work through, you know, we can't just move forward. We have to deal with the past. And that can be, you know, what happened when you guys lived together. That can mean things that never got discussed or got cleared out. And Mercury going retrograde in this house means that you're leaving somebody hanging, or they feel that way, and that you're not communicating with them very well. She says, yes, indeed, I've tried to fix everything, but it's only been me. Well, if there's anything I have learned about aneretic degrees is that not only are they really prominent in, you know, lessons in your life, so, you know, where taking on other people's problems can create health issues for you or mental issues for you, but when transiting outer planets are squaring it, that's what really brings it up. So like, look at what's happening right now. The moon's in Virgo, so detail-oriented, analytical, blah, blah, blah. And it's squaring your Mercury and your moon, and it's opposing Saturn and Neptune. So it's making Mercury and the moon the focal point. That's like, is it worth changing your newly established healthy habits? Is it worth changing your work schedule? Is it worth changing, you know, or disrupting your peace, you know, to go back and deal with the past? Is that really the way to handle it? And the truth is that until Saturn and Neptune leave Pisces, which won't be until about January, you're still going to feel the pressure of it squaring your Mercury and your moon, and you may not feel like it's ready, right? I would advise you to, number one, listen to your gut, because you're super intuitive. If you've got, you know, Sun conjunct Saturn, I mean, you're very mature. Obviously, there's been a lot of hard knocks in relationships, but I would probably say you can either wait until all these planets are coming into conjunction with Mercury and your moon, so it's going to be right around mid-December. And when it starts squaring your Saturn and your Neptune, you may feel like that's a time when you're ready to address certain situations, but you're not going to go out of your way or make any dramatic life changes. And you're certainly going to need to have a really healthy routine established before you integrate this person back into your life. And even then, things aren't necessarily going to be easy because planets are squaring Saturn, but this is when you set the stage and go, you know, here are my boundaries, or here are my limits, or these are my, you know, kind of personal requests. You need to respect them. I'm there for you, but I'm not going to fix it for you. And Saturn represents your relationships, and Mercury represents family. So it's going to get tested in mid-December. But I feel like there's better opportunity to clear out some of this stuff when you have a full moon in Virgo. And that's going to be taking place closer to end of February going into March of 2026. Because Mercury will be going retrograde. You'll have given it a couple of months of seeing if they're going to respect your boundaries, if they're going to be working on themselves, if they're going to treat you like an adult. And it'll give you the opportunity to kind of clear out or hash out any of the issues that are potentially going on at home under that eclipse. And it looks like the eclipse is right on your IC. So the potential is also at the end of February going into March. Like if you give them like a free pass now, you're going to be back in the same shit in February, March, because the eclipse at a 12 means you're like, now I need to distance myself from family. The craziness has come back. You know, they're not, you know, looking at me as an adult. They're not respecting, you know, my beliefs or my needs or my responsibilities, and I'm getting sucked back into it, and you're going to want to isolate yourself again. So you're almost better waiting until the Mercury retrograde at the end of February and the eclipse kicks in for you to be like, okay, let's see if they're going to kind of respect my needs. Now you can talk to them sooner. You can start addressing those boundaries in December, but see if they're applying it come February and March. Also, you know, your Sun conjunct Saturn, so that's a difficult relationship, I think, with men, particularly in communication, and sometimes feeling like it's a hardening, right? Saturn is kind of cold and distant, and it's icy, and it's highlighting your third house, which is communication issues in a nutshell. Over the next several years, you know, you're going to see eclipses that are going to start happening in Capricorn, and it'll hit your Saturn, it'll hit your Sun. It can give you the opportunity to better your relationship. But right now, with Jupiter in your first house opposing that, it means that you know that you need to have healthier habits. You need to be prioritizing your needs, your emotions, your daily habits, and your work, and pouring that energy into healing and working on yourself rather than giving it to other people who may take it for granted, right? Certainly your synastry with your dad, you know, if you were to ever like pull up his chart with your chart, you could take a look at it and see what's going on. But the Mercury moon is just, you know, over nurturing and caretaking and trying to be there to fix and teach and help other people. And what you're realizing is that it can be very self-depleting. And so you have to kind of readjust the scales and the balance a little bit right now. And they may have a difficult time recognizing they need to do their part and they need to meet you halfway. But it's about self-preservation and really walking the walk and talking the talk and having healthier habits in your own life and making sure that if somebody else comes in, that they're going to be respecting that, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Vanessa. Definitely try to stick to some of those timelines, talking about it mid-December, seeing how it's going at the end of January into March, and then reassessing the situation. All right, so I've got Adriana, Ascended Truth, Jan, Meredith, Emily, Christian, Kara, and Bachland. Am I saying that right? You're welcome. I got to plug your guys' charts in, so I'm going to do that. Give me just a second so I can plug those in, and then we can continue to keep going through the readings while you guys are waiting for me. Grab a snack, get something to drink. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and check out my new tarot deck that's for sale on Etsy if you guys want to see that. Check out my personal transit calendars, my 2026 calendar. Certainly go to the website at beyondtheveiledtarot.com. Sign up for my newsletter. I won't spam you, but we're going to be putting all of my courses on sale for Black Friday. So if you want to learn astrology the way I practice and the way that I teach it, I've got beginner courses we're going to have for sale. We also have tarot courses and a bunch of other stuff too. I like to teach astrology. That's like my favorite thing. That's why I spend so much time during my videos going in depth for some of this stuff. Somebody says, why Placidus and not whole house? Whole house has its place. Whole house has its place. But I feel like, you know, I have found with transits, Placidus is actually going to show you where things are actually taking place, which house it's in. Let's see, 718. And that's going to manifest as, I think, more accurately with Placidus, that if it's going through a Placidus house versus a whole sign house, it may not actually translate to where some of those transits actually impact. And I have found that Placidus is a lot more accurate. But every astrologer is going to have their own opinions about that. But whole sign, when planets ingress into this whole sign, you can feel it for sure. But no, I'm Placidus all the way. The more that I work with astrology and I study transits and I see it with my clients in my own life, I don't think I could ever be turned into a whole houser. You got your ice cream. What kind of ice cream are you eating? I've been on an ice cream kick. Have you guys heard of an ice cream called Ice Cream for Bears? It's like the best ice cream ever. I'm like a bit of like an ice cream fanatic these days. Here we go. Spumoni is my favorite. I ordered from Cold Stone. Oh my gosh, Cold Stone. I haven't had that in years. All right, so we've got Ascended Truth in there. Let's see, Jan 4/22. Let's see here. Ooh, 7:35 to 7:42. Okay, that's pretty close. We can work with that. Brooklyn, New York. Let's see. So that was for Emily. March 16th. Okay, so March. Hey, Emily, what year were you born? Oh, thank you. 1997. Got it. Sorry, guys. I have to be really thorough because I know the Mercury retrograde. I don't want to have like a bunch of wrong information in here. Right. So May 2nd, 26, 528. All right, so looks like we got everybody. Let me see what we got going on here. Okay, so we're gonna start with Adriana, and then we're gonna do Ascended Truth, and then is it Jan or Juan? Am I saying that right? Jan? Jan? All right, so let's start with Adriana. Right? Is that right? Yeah. This is an interesting question. Adriana says, my company was founded on July 18th, 2022 at midnight in London. Can you tell me if you see any big changes coming for the company regarding layoffs, mergers? Thank you. Well, these are some of my favorite questions. I like doing these. I always get curious though when people give me, whether it's a birth time or, you know, it's like an event chart or a company chart at midnight, like, was it actually midnight? That is the question. Certainly one way to gauge might mean that if this was actually an Aries rising, so this is the company that she, I assume, is either working for or owns, I'm not sure, but Aries rising is going to be ruled by Mars. So you need to go back and you need to think about what happened during the Mars retrograde, because that's going to tell you a lot. And the Mars retrograde actually started in December of last year, and it went retrograde from the 5th house into the 4th house, and it looks like it was opposing Pluto. So I wonder, you know, did they offer some people layoffs? Did, you know, you guys move out of an office? Did you start working more from home? So that's one thing I would look at. And then another is, currently right now in this chart, you know, over the last month, Mercury has been going retrograde in the 8th house of expenses, funding, and it came retrograde conjunct Mars, which basically means they're going, yeah, we're cutting back on anything connecting to advertising. Maybe we're cutting back on benefits. We're not giving as many bonuses. We're having to really pay attention to expenses. And Saturn is going to be the planet that is going to rule the actual business itself. And it looks like Saturn has been kind of sitting on top of the moon. So whatever they know is coming has been very private and it's been behind closed doors, or they're trying to delay maybe there being some changes or layoffs or changes with the company. And it's also been conjunct Neptune, which it was kind of born with this chart. If you look at the chart natally, Pluto in the first in the kind of in the midheaven is very powerful, but it's retrograde, and this is a critical degree. It's 29. So you're going to see more when planets are either hitting 29 degrees, which you're going to see a lot of them this week. Saturn and Neptune are kind of sextiling that. And then also going into the beginning of the year, you're going to have Saturn and, not Saturn, you're going to have the Sun and Mars and Venus that are all hitting these degrees. So Saturn is going to be very important. Both Saturn transits and also transits in this house. So if you look, Saturn in the 10th squares the north and the south node, which means they were trying to start a company and do something that was going to be cool and bringing people together and futuristic, but it's retrograde. So with Saturn retrograde square the north and the south node, that off the bat tells me that as Uranus has been on the north node squaring that, there's been a lot of financial upheaval and challenges. And in the immediate last month or so, there's been a lot of potential budgeting cuts or discussions regarding if they're going to have to do layoffs. If, and there's a big if that is going to happen, I would be paying attention to the planets that are going to be in the 7th house in opposition to Uranus. I almost wonder if it's going to be more about trying to negotiate with other companies and doing a merger, or finding ways to be able to get, financing or bridge loans or other things to kind of keep business going. So that way they don't have to, shut things down. And that's going to be a process over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And then you're also going to want to watch if there's any potential cuts to traveling or anything revolving around looming legal issues, because Mars is going to go into the 9th and it's going to square. And then really we want to watch when Mars comes back into Capricorn and it comes into conjunction with Pluto at a final degree. So that's going to be... there's a new moon conjunct Pluto. So if anything's going to happen, one of the other timings I would say is maybe around mid-January, because you have that dark moon conjunct Pluto. And so that means something is getting kind of phased out. What is this ruled by? Saturn. Saturn's direct conjunct Neptune. So likely they know they're in some serious trouble. I think financially, but also maybe they're running out of time when it comes to come up with a plan. And they're either going to contemplate whether or not they need to take on a merger or a business partnership. And there would be more serious things happening in mid-January under this new moon. And then you're going to see Chiron go direct on the ascendant, and it's going to cross the ascendant. And it does mean that there is going to be some difficult challenges in either, keeping the business going or rebooting the business. All of that's ruled by Mars, and Mars is going to be conjunct Saturn. So they're going to have to either downsize or they're going to let people go. And they may be realizing that now, and it may impact what they're doing at year end and how they're funding, the company and how they're giving bonuses. And if that starts to happen, that's the red flag that there could be some bigger issues pretty much from mid-January until about the end of February. This is not a very strong chart, unfortunately, with Mars being in weak position, in Taurus, with Saturn in the 10th house squaring the north and the south node. With Pluto in opposition to Mercury and the Sun. It's almost like whoever initiated or started this business, they did it with good intentions and they had a dream to create something really big. But it does look like there was going to be a lot of stress regarding where people are living and where people are working. And right now Jupiter is sitting conjunct the Sun and Mercury, which you would think is pretty good, right? Except for the fact that Jupiter rules the 8th house of losses and it's opposing Pluto. So one way that they would try to save money is say, well, we're going to offer people, packages to exit, or maybe, to retire, or maybe we close offices and see if people can work remotely or work home, or we're going to tell some people you have to come back into the office, otherwise you're not going to have a job. You're going to see some kind of extreme things like that going on. And by the time Pluto is fully squaring Mars at an 8, they're going to be out of money. So even if they get through some of this period for the next year or two, once these eclipses start happening in the 10th house and the North Node conjunct Saturn, the company could be accumulated by a new company in some way next fall. And then you're going to see Pluto start coming in for a square, and a retrograde in the 6th. So it's almost like they would restructure. Maybe they would have to bring in new people, or maybe they would have to downsize and then figure out how they could kind of configure things. But Pluto in the 10th house is still going to square Mars, which means there's still going to be funding issues, and it's going to be some really uncomfortable kind of periods of change. And I think probably their last ditch effort is figuring out how they can cut costs and who they can let go of without having any legal issues, and then trying to figure out whether or not it makes sense to, take out more debt or to partner with another person. So it's not a strong chart for that. Unfortunately, this is not a strong business chart. There's too much going on in the personal life of the person who dealt with this, or there is a sense of them having intentions to be able to set this business up so they could make money and focus more on their home, but it almost looks like the business stuff has become so overwhelming, and now they're having to pull themselves back into work when they're either living somewhere else or they're not really wanting to feel as involved in the development or the continuing changing process of the finances in the work. It's really, really difficult. But it's not, to me, this doesn't read as a chart that's supposed to be successful in business long-term, personally. And it was inevitable that there was going to be some major issues with Saturn. And because Saturn is in, obviously, Aquarius, that means that it's almost like there's too much rigidness going on with the groups or with the leaders or the leadership, or there is some sense of feeling like there's too much turnover maybe going on with leadership, or like having to adapt too quickly. So yeah, those are the timelines that I would follow. And certainly you could overcome this. The company can continue, but it's all over the chart. A Mars retrograde, at the beginning of 2027 in the 6th, which means they're going to have layoffs, so they're going to have to move to new offices or structure the business. Venus retrograde in the 7th house could be talking about the company potentially getting bought out. Maybe they're trying to explore, either funding or ways to be able to merge with another person to keep the company going. But there's going to be major, I think, changes going on with leadership or whoever's like running the company, especially within about the next year. Hopefully that's helpful. I know that sounds a little challenging, but give me some feedback and let me know what has been happening with that company, because man, that's a scary chart. What kind of a business is it, by the way? That makes me wonder too. Is it like a tech company? With Saturn being connected to the 11th and in the 10th, Mars being in an 8. See, that's the other thing. Like 8 degrees of Scorpio, 8 degrees of Taurus deals with black magic. It may not be intentional, but there could be some stuff here they do with money that's not so savory, that has some very negative kind of influences on the company. Ruled by Venus, and Venus is in Gemini in the 3rd. So there's something about the money practices or the way that they're managing money that's not kosher. All right, we've got Ascended Truths, and then Jan, and then Meredith. Let's see. Ascended Truths. All right, so Ascended Truth says, there we go, get that on there. Asking why employers are not communicating regarding a start date on a new job, and other employer is promotion, and the other employer is promotion is ahead. Okay, so you're wondering, why are other people getting promoted or moving up, and you're not communicating well regarding the start of a new job? So work is going to be connected to Saturn. Saturn is still retrograde, so that can be part of it, because it's retrograde till the end of November in your 12th, where you're like, where are we going? What's happening with work? Also, scheduling deals with Mercury, and it's retrograde over your Saturn, which means they're not communicating well, and they don't have their affairs in order or their plans together to tell you when to start. And recently your chart ruler Mars has been in conjunction to Saturn. Now Mercury is retrograding back over that. So it's possible, I mean, literally as early as, it could be tomorrow when Mercury retrogrades over your Saturn. My guess is probably when it's after the new moon, and the moon comes into conjunction with Mercury and Mars around November 19th. And there is an opportunity to have more insight on why there's been some delays, figure out what the problem is, and feel, I think, better about when the start date could be. And when Mercury is in a trine with Saturn, you may potentially start it, or at least know when you're starting it. So that could be the 22nd of November. And then Mercury is going to come back into a trine with Saturn, and that's going to be around December 7th. So it's really looking like later in November, maybe really getting into the full swing of things by about December 7th. And then your chart ruler, Mars, is going to go into your 10th house of career, and you're going to be working December 15th because Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So you're like, okay, I'm doing the thing. And Saturn is direct. So I don't think it'll take that long. But certainly, if it does take until, you have to understand with Mercury stressing a little bit financially because it's in your 8th, but also being like, so what's the deal? Am I going to be working? Am I not working? Like, should I be looking for another job? You know, can I schedule travel? Are there other things I can do? Like, am I just hanging out waiting for you? And if you're wanting to get insight, I mean, Mercury also rules how you communicate. So you could wait until Mercury is conjunct the Sun, and you might want to try your hand at reaching out closer to about the 20th. But I do think that this does likely look like come mid-December you're working because Mars is going through the 10th house and Saturn's direct. Your natal Saturn is in Sagittarius and Uranus is also opposing that. So something you got to kind of keep in mind is like, this has probably been a theme for the last 6 months as Uranus has been in Gemini, that there's been unexpected either financial changes or communication issues. And that's going to come back again. So you're going to see that pretty strong May, June, you know, July, as Uranus is making an opposition to Saturn. And it's going to be more pressing because it's going to be whether or not you're working and like getting paid and communication issues that you're having with bosses. She says, my question is, I'm frustrated about the lack of communication on an employer on a new job I'm about to get. I mentioned the start date and I just put in my 2 weeks on the other job I'm leaving. So that's the other issue, is that it's the Mercury retrograde. I mean, you know, ideally, this was something that was set in stone and you had defined dates of when you're starting and when you're getting notice and all that stuff when Mercury was in a trine with Saturn. So that should have been, could have been solidified around, you know, October, the week of October 20th. If it wasn't, then the retrograde is bringing this back up so it can give you the opportunity to get clarity so you not only know you have security, but also, you know, like, you know when you're working, you know? I'm also wondering if my second job will be giving a pay raise since my first year is coming up. I mean, certainly the Mercury retrograde can. I would be watching more for like when Mercury is conjunct Venus, that it's going to smooth over work relationships or get clarity as to whether or not, you know, you're going to get a raise. 8th house is money owed, so that's around November 24th. But this is about people coming back to you, reassessing, talking about work. It's at a 22. It's going to trine Saturn, and also this is when Mars is squaring the north or the south node. So I don't know if your work involves travel or communication or legal matters or things connecting to publishing, advertising, but it's almost like you're being thrusted into being like, okay, I got to take action, you know, as you're getting to the end of November. Money is going to be more Mars. It could be a combination also of Venus. And so with Mercury and Venus meeting here, there's a reevaluation of professional relationships, but also like job reviews and things regarding benefits. And it's going to trine Jupiter. So it can mean that it can help you, especially feel better about your job and feel more secure at home, or, you know, provide more money for home things. And it's trining Saturn. So it's about being resilient. So I see you being very, very busy. Like, you're going to be very busy. Like mid-December through January, February, as all those planets go through your 10th house, you're going to be very busy. But if you notice in your chart ruler, even though it's exalted in the 10th, it's retrograde. So that means that there's always this sense of, am I coming? Am I going? Am I starting? What am I doing? And it opposes your sun. So you have issues with like leaders not being direct, and you're kind of feeling stuck at home, wondering when you're supposed to, you know, start, or when you're supposed to go into like a new position. And probably what you will find is that as you go through Capricorn season, it's bringing you back into the office in some capacity, or you're really working and it's getting you out of like the home base, which is going to be a little agitating because Jupiter retrograde in your 4th is like, I want to be home. And like, look at all this Capricorn in the 10th is like, no, get to work. And it's sextiling Saturn. So probably one of the biggest gripes I've heard from Aries risings this year has been, oh, you know, Saturn and Neptune and Pisces, like, I'm tired, I'm depressed. Yeah, but also it's like my boss isn't communicating, right? Because Saturn's in the 12th, it's hidden. They're not telling me what's going on. They're not communicating efficiently. They don't even know what to plan on, or they tell me one thing and they don't get back to me. Like, until Saturn and Neptune leave Aries, this will continue. Probably bringing frustration to a point where, you know, inevitably you have to show up and you have to go, like, what are we doing? What is the plan? Because Saturn in your first house is about being more more independent, but also assertive in, you know, telling people what will and will not work for you. And you'll become even less tolerant next year when Saturn sits on your ascendant and is squaring Mars, if people don't know what direction they're going in, or if they're not showing you the love financially, right? Something to think about. Hopefully that's helpful for you. And I hope you get your raise and that they come through with those dates when it's likely going to be, I think, more beneficial for you getting some insight about work. All right, so is it Jan? Okay, hopefully it's not glitchy. If it's still glitchy, let us know. So I've got, I don't know if it's Jan, that's what I'm going to keep saying. April 22nd, 1997, 7:50 p.m., Brooklyn, New York. And says, hey, I'm dealing with confusing relationship break and feeling astrology could offer guidance. I'm born 4/22/97. It's between 7:35 and 7:42 p.m. in Brooklyn. Can you check my chart and current transits? My name is Jan Carlos. All right, Montecito. So, Scorpio rising. Obviously, you're a sun in Taurus, and your moon is in Scorpio, so you were born under a full moon. So you're ruled by Mars and Pluto. Relationships are ruled more by Venus. And girl, there's some stuff going on. So first things first, you know, the Mercury retrograde going on in your sign, it's going right over your ascendant. And that's about some kind of integration, turning inward, emotionally, communication-wise, and psychologically, kind of being like, what is going on? And it definitely triggers intimacy issues. So whether you're feeling more vulnerable, if you don't know how to communicate, if there's scarcity, mindset, financial things coming up, that can all kind of come up with the Mercury retrograde in your sign. And it's been in opposition, obviously, to all of your Taurus placements. I mean, you got Venus in Taurus, Mercury in Taurus, Sun in Taurus. Traditionally, this is like, yeah, you really prefer stable, consistent, reliable relationships. It doesn't always play out that way because you're born on a full moon, so there can be lots of emotions and kind of things that can come up that can feel scary or overwhelming when it comes to relationships. But Venus being the ruler of your seventh, and the fact that you have a lot of planets that have been going through Scorpio opposing your Venus, which happens every year, it gives you a little bit of perspective of like, who am I compared to, you know, what's going on with other people. Now, why is there a break going on in a relationship right now? I think it's going on because Pluto is squaring your sun. That's what I think. And usually Taurus sun in the seventh house, whole sign, we're going whole sign now, brings up, you know, reliable, dependable, comfortable, security, and partners. And what's happening is the sun is going to represent other people's egos. It could also be dealing with men, you know, and power struggles and intimacy issues. And Pluto is now going through your Placidus third house of communication, squaring the sun, which means you're going, I don't like this change that's going on. I don't like the emotions that's bringing up with me. I don't like the issues that we're having, you know, in terms of communication, and things are not really kind of going well. And it's putting that pressure, because Pluto rules your chart, on the partnership and the relationship. And it really means that things need to change emotionally and on the home front for you, and possibly there need to be some changes going on in the career of your partner to be able to bring the two of you guys together. This is like, it's tough. Pluto is also heading towards a conjunction with Uranus, and if you look, you're born with Venus square Uranus at an 8. So changes with your living situation and relationships are inevitable. You were kind of born with that. So every 7 years when you have Saturn transits, your home changes, your relationships change, your job changes, you know, you change. And your moon opposes all of this and squares Uranus. So you're probably somebody who comes from, you know, a childhood of feeling uprooted a lot, an unconventional upbringing, maybe parents that were divorced, you know, maybe you know, kind of didn't have a lot of stability. And that's really brought up the Scorpio moon, where you're very sensitive, very emotional, and especially to your environment. And so you seek security in relationships, but now Pluto is squaring your moon, and it's also squaring your sun. And it's saying something's got to give on the home front, or you finally have to deal with some of the home and family related matters to really get through some of the issues that you're having with the relationship. the truth is that for the next several years, Pluto is going to continue to square your sun next year. It's going to start squaring your Mercury, which is definitely going to bring up some communication issues with relationships. And then it's going to come into a square with your Venus. So without sounding too grim, it's like, dude, you know, if you think things are intense now, look at 2025 as like the dress rehearsal for 2026, right? So if we go fast forward in time, things are going to get really intense here in February because you have eclipses in your 4th house. So there's going to be some big emotional clearing, some family changes, some home changes. It's going to involve Pluto and Mars squaring your moon. So somebody's got to move or make some kind of commitment to a new living situation or talking about the future and whether or not you guys are going to do this thing. And it's putting the pressure on all this Taurus in your 7th house. And to your defense, having Taurus in your 7th house means that you have partners that can become very rigid. Having the sun in the 7th house has definitely delayed relationships and marriage. They can become very fixated on doing things on their time, their way, and their security. And your chart screams you need to change something emotionally at home. And also, like I said, they need to change something with the career, right? In order for you guys to see eye to eye. A lot of it's also going to depend on their astrology and like what they've got going on in their chart. And obviously, you know, you can take into consideration what's going on with your progressed Venus or what's going on with your chart ruler or your annual perfection lord. So this year, at least up until April of 26, you're in an annual perfection year 28. So you're in a 5th house year. And that means that when planets are going through the 5th house, you feel the effects of it more. Well, Saturn's been on the south node, so a detaching, a deconnection from a romantic partner. The ruler is Jupiter, and Jupiter is at the 9th house. So you're having to say, what am I learning about this? Do we need to travel together more to kind of lighten, you know, the mood? Do we need to talk more seriously about the future of relationships and what that can bring and, you know, how we can kind of grow together? And usually the 5th house year is a pretty good year relationship-wise, except your ruler, Jupiter, is in the 4th. So it means that something actually feels like it has to come to an end this year, whether it's the relationship or the living situation. When you start your birthday in April, you'll move into a 6th house here, where you have Saturn, which is going to be more about schedule management. And what's going to get kicked up is Mars, and Mars will be your time lord. So from April 26 to 27, you know, you got to watch Mars transits. I can tell you that from my perspective, it looks like a lot of this is really working on your health, your schedule, and your habits and finding ways to better kind of set your life up. So you're building out what you need to do that's best for you and trying to factor in and figure out how to bring relationships into that to make it work. But you're looking at about 2 years of Pluto squaring your sun, your Mercury, and your Venus. So getting to the core issue of, well, does somebody need to move? Do we need to address the past? You know, do we need to be dealing with family issues? And that's all going to be putting pressure on the relationship in a very big way. And North Node and Pluto going into the 4th house is feeling like I got to feel like I'm living in a place that's grounded and I need to be focusing on the life that I'm building and getting kind of solid. And you guys are going to have to find ways to be able to do that together. But you're still several years away from Pluto squaring your Venus. So you may very well be in and out of a relationship now. But the likelihood is that there's going to be another turning point where there could be a big change in a relationship. And that's going to happen next fall when Venus goes retrograde in your sign. Think back to what happened in the fall of 2018, because there's some similarities here where you either got in or out of a relationship. I think you'll see that again in September, October of 26. And then Pluto is going to start coming in for the kill shot, and it's going to start squaring off with your Mercury and your Venus. And like shift is getting very real in 2027. Chiron goes into your 7th house. You got to heal relationship wounds. Pluto's conjunct Uranus, so there's going to be some big home changes. And I would approach the next 2 or 3 years of really saying, whatever changes in my life are happening relationship-wise, work-wise, whatever, we're really needing to focus on how we're building a home or a home life together. And we can deal with some of the turbulence and the things that come, but we have to be willing to kind of, you know, navigate really creating, I think, a firmer foundation for the future. And that's going to be quite uncomfortable as Pluto is squaring your moon and also squaring your sun and your Mercury. But I think there's still other cycles, I guess is what I'm getting at, where you could be in or out of something. But right now, the Mercury retrograde is more, how can I reassess and decide, you know, how I feel and connect with somebody. And possibly when Mercury is connecting with Venus, you'll have a heart-to-heart with them. So that could be like around the 24th of November. But then Venus is going to oppose Uranus. And if you're feeling like you need to prioritize yourself, or you're putting forth new goals, or there's new habits, and you're moving away from the relationship and they come back, they can feel threatened. Like almost like you're, you know, like moving on without them, right? So watch for that. All right, we've got Meredith and then Emily. What's up, Meredith? March 26, 1969, 3:15 p.m. in Melbourne. Hi there, Singleton Aries. Wondering if there's any sign of financial security on the way. All right, well, Meredith, interesting question, interesting chart. First things first is, have you ever heard of interceptions? If not, you should, because they're blind spots. So that's something that you see when you're dealing with Placidus charts. In a traditional whole sign, Cancer rising, you're going to see Leo is your second house ruler, which is about money. And if you notice in your chart with the Placidus, and this is why I like Placidus, you've got Cancer as your rising sign, and then your second house of money starts with Virgo. So Leo gets swallowed up in the first house. And that also means Aquarius gets swallowed up in the seventh house. So that tells me off the bat, if you have an intercepted sign in the first that belongs to the second and the eighth, then there's going to be some blind spots when it comes to money. And that means that there should be something rather unusual about the placement of your sun, because it rules the interception in your first, and also either Saturn or Uranus, because it rules the interception in your seventh. So what money I make or I spend or what I do to support myself versus the dramatic changing nature of what's going on with friendships or relationships and whether or not people are unreliable leads me to believe that you're probably somebody, just based off of what you said, Singleton Aries, that's like, yeah, I got to rely on myself. So where's the money coming from? So if you look at your sun, which rules the interception in your second, it's in Aries, which is good. It's strong. It's exalted there. But it's also in the eighth house conjunct Chiron. And that tells me that there's some wounding revolving around whether or not you feel supported physically or financially by other people. And a lot of what you make or what you generate does not come easy, or it may come through eighth house themes like inheritance, taxes, investments. It could also mean that because that's your whole sign 10th, there's a lot of change and transformation of your job, which has a huge impact on your finances. Anyway. The fact that the sun's conjunct Chiron, it opposes Jupiter and Uranus, man, this is like a chart that's feast or famine. It could be really good where you have money that comes in from other people and it's very unexpected, and it can be through ways that are owed to you karmically because the North Node's in your eighth. And it could also be really good because it opposes Jupiter and Uranus. So it can just be like really good unexpected money stuff or relationship stuff or house or living situation stuff that could prop up your resources, especially with your North Node in the eighth. Probably in this last year, things have been a little difficult because Saturn and Neptune have sat on your North Node in the eighth house, Placidus. So that's money issues, delays with dealing with debt, mortgages, loans, not necessarily getting or feeling supported from other people. And that is a Cancer rising whole sign 10th house. So it can mean there's budgeting issues at work, or I'm not working, or there isn't consistency with work, or I'm not making enough, or I'm not getting paid enough, or there's kind of issues with benefits, whatever. And if you look at your Saturn rulership through your interception in your seventh, Saturn's conjunct Venus retrograde, which is in your whole sign 10th, which is karmic blockages and issues revolving around work and responsibility and feeling like you got to make money yourself, Aries. And then Venus is also retrograde. Uranus would be the co-ruler, which is conjunct Jupiter in the second house. So there's some definite money issues here. Like I said, feast or famine when I look at your chart. Right now with Saturn and Neptune that are about to wake up and they're heading for your North Node, I would say this can be really reinforcing the fact that other people have to support you, pay you back, give you benefits. They need to give you what you're owed. You could actually see some big money changes happening in February around the solar eclipse. That's going to happen in your eighth house. Right here. February 17th, and then you're going to have a eclipse that's going to happen around March 3rd, 2026. That is a south node eclipse in your second house ruled by Mercury. So this is about, probably getting to about February, March and being like, kind of pushing it a little bit with expenses, need to budget, need to scale back, dipping into savings, needing to figure out a way to pay stuff off. Knowing that that's coming in February and March, even though you're getting down to the wire, I think that the eclipses with the North Node in your eighth house is going to get you paid. I also think with Saturn coming into conjunction with your sun, it could definitely be a new job, or it could be, an inheritance or some money, once again, that's being owed to you that's kind of coming through. But You need the money now. You're really going to need the money in February, March, and you may not really start to see the resources start to come in until closer to April. Okay, so you need to kind of prepare for that. Also, the Mercury retrograde, everything going on, it's very financial because it's starting in, Sagittarius, but it's going back into Scorpio. And so I look at your chart with the retrogrades in the fourth, that's like, well, do I move? Do I consider selling property? How can I cut expenses, so I can save more money? Do I need to go back to work? And there's this back and forth that you're doing where you're trying to figure out, is it about changes at home or changes in the workspace? And you might feel like you're having to get out of the house and getting back into work, or getting creative and trying to find ways to really focus on bringing in money. We need a good Mercury transit for money to come in. And Mercury's been, receiving a conjunction to Saturn all year. So that's also kind of delayed your finances. Saturn will start to move away from it. It'll come in conjunction with your sun. So I definitely feel like there is something that's going on here where there's going to be much more of a focus for you on probably going in a new career path or a new career direction in the new year. And then also feeling like empowered and renewed by how you're making resources and really having to stand up for what is owed to you. But a lot of Cancer risings have gotten snaked. Mercury retrograde has been in your money house this summer. You had a Mars retrograde happening earlier this year. And now Saturn's going to start coming into your 10th house in this next year, and it's going to give you the opportunity to restructure things, which I think can be good. But I bet you have some really crazy, really crazy money stories. Like if you've got Jupiter, Uranus, and Libra in the second house, like partners have had to pay you money, or there's been windfalls or unexpected lump sums or things that had to come from employers or things that are insurance related. And certainly the sun in the 8th house, it does acquire wealth at some point. Usually it's connected to death and inheritance, but it also can mean that there are periods of self-regeneration and rebirth and having to be courageous and kind of, working from the bottom and working your way back up. But it can be like a rags to riches, kind of story that you've had several times throughout your life. And with Saturn and Neptune hitting your sun in Chiron, I would say a lot of this is about really knowing what you're owed, and it can manifest as legal issues or things that are going on with money that's owed to you, or potentially even with employers, throughout the next couple of years. Right now, Chiron is sitting conjunct your Venus and your Saturn too. So that means that there's relational issues going on either with authority figures or people at work, and it's making you feel like, you're just, no matter what you do, you can't quite find your spot at work. And that's concluding pretty soon. But that's also just highlighting karmic themes that you have with Venus conjunct Saturn in the 10th. The irony is that with that placement and, with, I think, some of the aspects that you have to Mars, it's in a fire sign too. I mean, this is usually somebody who's not only really successful, but also like very financially stable. And so I would be really focused on knowing that there's more retrogrades and eclipses that are going to be going through your second house or affecting your second house this next year. Trying to pay off as much stuff as you can, trying to really minimize debt and expenses. And if there's anything where you're getting slighted, you have to go after what you're owed because likely it's going to be paid back to you. Definitely been difficult with Mercury retrograde with the financial department, but things are about to actually shift pretty dramatically. And it looks like you're going to find creative ways to be able to find some funds, especially in the spring. Here we go. Was financially cleaned out by abusive relationship, no inheritance to come, been famine for some time. So my thought is that now that Saturn is now coming into conjunction with your sun, it means that something is going to be rewarded to you, but likely it could be a job or some kind of responsibility, but it'll still pay. And it's going to oppose Jupiter and Uranus, which means it's now coming into this rebirth period where you're no longer feeling reliant on another person. The cleaning out has happened. I can see that. Like, that's definitely the sun in the 8th house. But now that Saturn's going to oppose Jupiter and Uranus, it's almost like the exact opposite of what happened 15 years ago. So if you go back and think about what happened in when Saturn was in Libra, you're going to see now that Saturn's coming into Aries. And even though it's hitting your sun and your Chiron, which is not fun, I think it's going to be a financial and an emotional rebirth period. I think that at a 5, it's just going to be about you dealing with something creatively and also dealing with the emotions and the heartbreak that has kind of come from insecurity and issues that you've had with being able to trust partners. But Jupiter's going into your second house next year. I mean, that's going to trine Saturn. I mean, that's almost I don't like saying a guarantee, but you're definitely going to see that finances are going to be dramatically improved come the summer because Jupiter will expand your finances in the second house. With the South Node eclipses, it means that whatever is coming your way is owed to you, and it's also something that is really going to benefit you. But I do think you're going to have to work for it. Jupiter trine Saturn is like, if you want it, you got to work for it. So there will be a job, there will be a responsibility, but there's also going to be money that's going to come with ease with Jupiter in the South Node being in your second house. And likely it might even include, you know, some travel perks or something that's going to be Jupiter related, education perks, training that's going to allow you to have, you know, some kind of opportunity to expand in your career as well. Definitely interesting with Venus conjunct Saturn and Venus retrograde. Wow. Some of those oppositions, you have been through the relationship, like ring of fire several times through. So, I mean, obviously with that, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. All right, we've got Emily and then Kristen and Kara. Sorry, we already spoke to Coco. So let's talk to Emily. What's up, Emily? Emily says, looking for some insight on transits, including the new moon. I tried to look both at Placidus and whole sign, but I have intercepted section of my chart, which makes it murky. Thank you for all that you do. I appreciate that. Let's look at the new moon. So, I mean, this is a new moon that you could look at it Placidus or whole sign, and it's going to be the same thing, right? So, just something to consider. It's going to be taking place in your, well, I take that back. I mean, I'm looking at it by sign, okay? Whole sign, it would be your 10th house. But this is a Mercury retrograde that's going right over your midheaven, and then you've got a new moon that's conjunct your midheaven. So I would look at this more from the perspective of it's going to be work-related because of the retrograde. However, okay, sure, a new moon in the, you know, the 9th house is travel, education, your philosophy, opportunities for self-realization, for growth, for overcoming fears. And honestly, it's in pretty good aspect in your chart. It's going to be trining transit Saturn, which is your traditional ruler, and Neptune in the 1st, right on the South Node. So it's about what you're willing to release to start new. So it could be new work, you know, new goals, new education, new travel. It is also going to be trining Jupiter in Cancer in your 6th. So this is going to be about expansion of your work, health, routines, and hobbies. Not hobbies, your habits. I've seen a lot of Aquarius risings that are like, you know, I'm not happy with my work schedule, or I'm having issues with the boss, or I want to change jobs, or I'm going back and forth in regards to where I want to work or how I'm going to be working, and, you know, what sacrifices I have to make. So it can definitely represent some indecisiveness work-wise, especially with Mercury retrograde right over the midheaven with Mars, and it's conjunct Pluto. So there's something going on there regarding your relationships with groups or maybe friends at work. That could be something else. And trying to navigate the situation delicately so you can get into a schedule or into an office or a job that you feel like is more conducive, and it's also going to cover you financially. That's the trine to Saturn. Where it's tricky is, you know, Mercury's still going retrograde, and to me, it looks like you may be pivoting and going in a different direction financially. You're starting to think about going in a different direction, or your goals regarding what you want to make financially is shifting, and you're starting to think about job change, or there could be changes with bosses or people at work. That's going to pretty much be consistent until the beginning of December. Then when you start getting planets going into Sagittarius, you know, you may see some of the new things that are starting to grow in a professional sense, maybe a little bit later because it's not an exact, you know, 10th house new moon. And you'll still have another new moon, but the next one's going to be in your 11th house. So I think the Scorpio one is more relating to your career, basically. The other thing is that this new moon is going to be in opposition to Uranus, which is your modern day ruler. So it's a lot of the changes, the shifts, the things that are going on work-wise. You know, do I move? What's this bringing up for me emotionally? How is this impacting my home or my living situation? And some Aquarius and Aquarius risings are going to find that it's about taking time off and not being so worried or consumed about work and focusing more on your emotions, or traveling, or spending time with your family, or doing things during the holiday. Others are going to find that it just seems like everything is just going wonky at work, and you're needing to kind of take a pause and really reevaluate before you're making any permanent decisions or changes in your professional life, and you're like having to sleep on it first. She says, I work in politics has been a lot, trying not to make enemies if I can help it. I'm not really worried so much about enemies. I mean, Saturn is enemies, and this is trining Saturn, and Saturn's on your sun. So if anything, it's about you doing your best to try to protect other people's reputations and make sure that everything appears kosher out in the world professionally, which I think you're going to navigate well. I just think there's a lot of not feeling like a lot of stability emotionally or at home and kind of getting pulled around a lot and maybe having to travel or being out of the office or doing things that are taking you to other places or talking to people in other time zones. Watch out for groups. Right? Like I've told a lot of my Aquarius risings, you're not at work to make friends. Mercury going retrograde in your 11th back into your 10th is like, there are some people that, you know, you may want to be friendly with or you think that you could be cool with. And I'd be like, just go to work and focus on working. You're not there to make friends. Do everything that you need to do to really focus on, you know, being seen as like a leader because the retrogrades are going into your 10th house. Now, it will trine Jupiter, so it can give you, you know, more kind of a cohesive schedule or kind of getting into the swing of working with new people or, you know, being in new places. And there can also be some moments where you get some recognition. I mean, Mercury and Mars are on your midheaven, so people are going to listen to you and you're going to have an opportunity to really be heard, especially by superior people who are in leadership positions. And, you know, you're going to be brought into meetings or there are going to be things where you're going to have to be participating, kind of getting feedback and giving feedback. And just be mindful of what you're saying because all eyes are going to be on you during some of these particular moments. And obviously, you know, the shadow started at the second half of October. So I really think that, you know, if you go back and you look at what's been going on with strategy and planning and like leadership and what people are saying they're going to do versus what they're actually doing, there's going to be a lot of back and forth about promises that have been made, probably by some people that you're working with, since last month that are not going well. And they're having to rethink or renegotiate and trying to find ways to be able to kind of appease either, you know, their constituents or, you know, other people who are in their party. And easier said than done because a lot of the Mercury retrograde has been about changes that are going on with economic policy and how this is impacting money, banks, finances, everything from farming to financial contributions, and I think you're going to see things that are going to sway and you're having to kind of more or less do kind of like damage control, you know, so this isn't going to be such a blow up situation for people who you're kind of working with. So Saturn and Neptune are coming out of an opposition with your Mars too, and that's definitely bringing up some challenges in regards to relationships with other people. And I think with Saturn and Neptune in opposition to your Mars, at least between now and the beginning of next year, it will definitely, because I can see you're like very intuitive and you can read people very well. If you feel like there's a situation where somebody's pressing you, play dumb. Because you'll have people that'll be coming out and trying to, you know, create problems for you at work with that opposition to your Mars. And I would just be like, you know, ignorance is bliss. Just literally play dumb in some certain situations, especially because it's going to give you the opportunity to really utilize Saturn and Neptune and read the room and show people that you're not really a threat or that you're not really like all that checked in. You can still do your job, but it's really, really, really important for you to be playing dumb with that opposition to Mars because you will have some people who will come out and try to create some problems and also, you know, try to get you out of your job. I love playing dumb. That's perfect. Hopefully that's helpful in giving you some insight in how to navigate that. But yeah, the new moon I think is more connected to work stuff and opportunities to make more money and also get to know the people that you're working with better. You're welcome. I can't imagine working in politics right now. That's got to be colorful. All right, we've got Kristen, and then we've got Bachland, and then we're done. So is it Christian? May 2nd, 1996 at 5:28 a.m. in Louisville. We're Independence, it's great, but it's a lot. So I'm very curious about my current Saturn return and how this new moon in Scorpio will affect me. All right, well, let's take a look. Aries rising, sun in Taurus, and your moon is in Libra. You've got this new moon that's going to be in Scorpio, which will be taking place in your natal 8th house as an Aries rising, and very close to your Pluto, so possible opportunities for regeneration, purging, letting go of toxic habits, getting your money straight, and really focusing on anything revolving around purging and purification. You asked about your Saturn's return. You got like a sneak preview. Like you got to watch the trailer in the movie theater and eat a little bit of popcorn this year and start to see what's coming, but not quite yet. That Saturn returns me next year. And it's not just a Saturn return, it's a Saturn return with a Neptune transit. So, having Saturn transit your natal Saturn, that's your growing up period. It's in your 12th house, so it's going to be more about your spiritual side. Having a meditation practice, a nighttime routine, I think is important here. But also knowing your worth. Saturn's at a 2. And you've got Saturn trine Pluto, so when your Saturn return happens, it's trining Pluto, so it's going to inspire you to learn more, tap into your intuition, focus on money management, and be dealing with like karmic entanglements with other people. But the new moon is interesting because it's in the 8th house, it's trining Saturn and your natal Saturn, and it is also in conjunct or quincunxure Mars. Woo, girl. That's tricky. This is going to be bringing up some things where you're going to be getting a little defensive over the next 6 months, or it's teaching you where you need to listen to your spidey senses and stand up for what's right, or be, focusing on being brave, or, facing problems head on, dealing with conflict head on. Which Mars at 29 degrees in your first house, you're intense, like there's no stopping you. And your moon is in opposition to Mars as well. So I don't think you're timid. At all, actually. I think that there's a lot of power in this chart, but really I think the goal for an Aries rising is what needs to change internally, what have I been resisting, what am I afraid of, what needs to go. And where you can let things go in a peaceful manner with trines to Saturn and Neptune emotionally, I think it's going to be about addressing old wounds and, facing your fears. The fact that it's also going to trine Jupiter is really good for changes on the home front, financial things connected to home, family, and money. And it can give you the opportunity to really focus on a savings plan. Easier said than done with oppositions to Uranus. There could be some unexpected expenses and changes that are kind of coming, all over. But the days after the new moon, you're going to see Mercury retrograde conjunct Venus. So it's actually bringing you in more financial opportunities or money that's owed to you, or it's kind of like fixing a financial situation, or there's a solution that comes in right around the 25th or the 26th, and then it's going to come into a trine with Saturn, so it's going to ease some of the fears. So whether it's intimate relationships that are getting healed, or there's some psychological breakthroughs, or there's some financial breakthroughs, the new moon is actually quite beneficial in your chart. It's a water trine, so you're not going to see it as active. Water kind of creeps up on you and it takes time for it to build, and then we see the trine, suddenly we're crying but we feel better, or suddenly our intuition kicks in and then we make a move and then we realize, it was good that I listened. It's not going to be as obvious as a fire trine. And because it's trining your Saturn, I think it's kind of preparing you for your Saturn return, which is really going to kick in when Saturn goes into Aries starting in January. And then you will see your Saturn return is happening pretty much February, March, and then Neptune's going to hit your Saturn too. I had transit Neptune hit my Saturn, but it wasn't the same time I had my Saturn return. And from what I've been observing for people who are going through this right now, that's one hell of a transit. So you're one of those people that I would be like, look, it would be worth making an investment and talking to an astrologer and getting an astrology reading. Not only do I think that's a time where you should do it, just in general, if you're between 27 and 29, because you're going to get a roadmap for what to do, but because you're going through a Neptune transit at the same time. And because Saturn's going to hit your ascendant, it's hitting an angle. And because Chiron's going to hit your Mars, your chart ruler. Those 3 transits are big transits. Positive is that Saturn and Neptune's going to trine your Pluto. So it's going to be teaching you about releasing, letting things go, what you're kind of learning about changes in relationships, or how travel or education can change you. And it's trying to get you to learn more about your own personal power. But my God, this is a new moon that's kind of preparing you, at least psychologically, to do all of the necessary changes that you need to do now before you get into the Saturn return. So that's what I'm saying. Like, usually when people are 27, that's your progressive lunar return. 28, you're coming into your Saturn return. 29, you're in your Saturn return. 30, you're done, but you don't really start seeing the effects of it kind of subside until about maybe 31. For me, I felt it was like closer to 30, 32, 33, but next year is going to be a big year. And what I can tell you is this new moon trining Saturn is trying to get you to emotionally or psychologically get your affairs in order. So if you do need to make some financial changes, some personal changes, or some career changes, you're investing in that, right? Like, so for an example, A good time to start thinking about a savings plan, you know, or a rainy day fund or an investment fund or retirement related things. That could be something you're starting to think about now. Because that's leaning on that maturity of Saturn and how you are with money. Saturn's at it too, rather than just being like out of sight, out of mind, you know. And you are a Taurus and you've got, you know, Mercury in your second house, Sun in the second house, whole sign that's very strong for making money, especially because it trines your Jupiter and your Neptune. But I think that it's what you're going to learn about in your Saturn return is that it's more going to be about your personal values changing and being like, well, just because I can make it doesn't mean I spend it. And you know, something is shifting, revolving around the way that you look at like material goods and what makes you happy and what you're working towards. And that's going to be a lot of what's going to come up for you with the Saturn return. And maybe, you know, added to, it's going to be like, well, less is more, right? And this is also that personal reflection, that maturity and like not resistance, but patience that's necessary rather than, you know, Saturn in the 12th house, which is super kind of still and like stoic. And then Mars at 29 is just kind of like reacting to things, you know. I have been working towards building a savings good. I mean, that's going to be really important, and it's more about building towards your dreams because it's Saturn and Neptune, or building or going in a direction professionally where you're feeling like you're living your dream job, or you're making money independently, or you feel like you have more control over your resources. There's going to be a lot of that stuff that's going to come up. But man, Saturn and Neptune hitting Saturn, Saturn in an angle, Saturn hitting the South Node, Chiron hitting Mars. I mean, those are three very big transits. I would really consider talking to an astrologer. I'm not just going to sit here and like plug me. I mean, if you want to come and see me, you know, I definitely can give you lots of advice about how to navigate that, but that would take about an hour to unpack. First, start with this new moon, where you can be really focusing on, you know, continuing to flush out ideas or how you can save money. I've told a lot of Aries risings during this retrograde, don't travel, save money, save it, invest it, you know, or if you have a travel plan, you know, start a savings where you're putting money away where you can go on a big trip in a year, or be investing in education, or be learning more about financial kind of freedom. And then as you're getting to next year, I think it's going to definitely pay off. It's going to be really beneficial, especially knowing that Venus rules your second house of money. And you're going to be seeing that, you know, now Jupiter is going to start sextiling Venus. So you're going to have more freedom to be able to travel and kind of do some of those things next year, right? Anyway, I hope that's helpful. If you want a session with me, click the links below and go to my website. I do Saturn return readings, but with a situation like that, I would be like a transit reading is better because we can talk about the Saturn return. But Saturn hitting your ascendant, your South Node, and your Mars, and Chiron hitting your Mars, those are all three very big transits that you're going to have next year. So hopefully we can connect or come back as those transits happen if you want to get a reading on that, right? So there you go. Saving for a trip for my 30th birthday. See, like you're already doing it. And that a lot of that is because Saturn is in your 12th house. So you're intuitively kind of approaching making these decisions. But as Saturn and Neptune conjunct, hopefully you get to go to like a foreign land that you've always wanted to go to, right? 12th house. All right, so last but certainly not the least, we have got Bachland, November 19th, 1986 in Toronto at 11:42 p.m. And they are a Leo rising with a sun in Scorpio and a moon in Cancer. And they said, I've always had issues in love. I want to know when will it be good? Well, I mean, come on, Leo rising. I mean, you guys love drama. I love you, but you do. And secondly, you guys have Saturn/Uranus that rules your 7th house. So off the bat, I see more Cancer and Leo risings that have issues in relationships and other signs because Saturn is connected to your 7th house. So that's one. Two is if you look at your chart, you have 29 degrees Leo rising and you have a descendant of 29 degrees Aquarius, which means you end up with people who can be dramatic, but also people who can be kind of unconventional, different, unexpected. There's constant change, or there can sometimes be aloofness or on and off. And Mars is there. So yeah, you've had some relationship challenges for sure. You're very welcome. And then Sun rules your chart. It's in Scorpio, and Mars squares that. So it's like check, check, check. And then Saturn is the other co-ruler of your 7th house, and Saturn is in the 4th house conjunct Uranus. So people coming back and forth, off and on. Your Venus retrograde in Scorpio. I mean, that's not easy. There can be a lot of changing your mind in relationships, or whole sign the 4th coming back. And then Venus conjunct Pluto. I mean, like what? Yeah, there's a lot of relationship challenges in this chart. You are not lying. I think the positive is that you do have Jupiter in its home sign in Pisces. And even though you've had a bit of a rough run, I will give you that 100%. Things are about to change. And they could go one of two very different ways. And it can also be that, sometimes I see people going through Pluto square Venus and they're like, oh my God, it's going to be terrible. And I'm like, no, you just can't get obsessive and you need to stay open. And like a good relationship could come in that could change everything. So you are going through in this next year, Pluto in Aquarius is going to start squaring your Venus and your Pluto, which means relationships will come in. It's going to put the pressure on you to communicate, get out of the past, be willing to move, and keep an open mind with what relationships can look like. It can be uncomfortable because there can be a lot of unnecessary, dramatic changes in relationships, but it's going to push you to get out of the past or change your home. Now, the positive is that the North Node's coming in conjunction with Jupiter, which you get once every 19 years. So this means that, there is some fated connection that's likely going to be coming in. And my guess is we got to see something between the Sun and also, Jupiter or the North Node. So recently, Sun has been trining that. We're going to see the Sun come into a trine with Saturn literally the next couple days. So girl, keep your eyes open. And then you're going to see Venus start coming into a trine with Jupiter and Saturn as well. Pretty much between now and the end of November. There's some energy here that could definitely bring relationship energy in. But that North Node is going to hover around Jupiter really until the beginning of the year. And this could bring in somebody who's tall. It could bring in somebody who's foreign, somebody who likes to be by water. They're intuitive, they're spiritual, they're into metaphysics, they're into photography. But because your descendant is ruled by Saturn and you've got Saturn at a 10, I almost wonder, is this somebody from the past that's going to come back? Are you finally getting over the past and then somebody new comes in? That's another interpretation that I have. So when the North Node hits your Jupiter once every 19 years, it could mean there's a good relationship change coming. But then on top of that, look at this. You're going to have an eclipse that's going to be right on your descendant in February of 2026, February 17th. Solar eclipse, action-oriented, relationship being seated. Now, could somebody come in around that time? Sure. But look at this. Solar eclipse on your Mars, so it's going to be pushing you to get out of the past and maybe move. You're going to have Venus conjunct your Jupiter, and you're also going to have the Venus North Node connection trining your Venus. What? I mean, okay, this is good. I mean, you've been around the block long enough to know. Go back and think about what happened 18, 19 years ago. It could have been your first crush, your first real love, but I wonder what happened then. Because you're seeing similar transits. The only difference is this time around, Pluto squaring your Venus. So out of 5, it means, yeah, you could deal with a younger person. There could be some drama in a relationship, but I love the North Node hitting your Jupiter. You're opening up to deeper relationship connections. I love that there's going to be an eclipse on your descendant where you might meet somebody right around that time or the weeks following. And I also like that Pluto is going to square your Venus, and it's going to be like, if you really want love, what are you willing to change in terms of how you communicate where you're living? And are you open to new relationship dynamics? Even Uranus is squaring your ascendant or your descendant. See, the problem is that, and it's not a problem, but this new moon's going to be on your sun. So it's trying to get you to start thinking about, well, where do you want to live? And does it make sense to get out of the house more? And does there need to be a change in something about your emotional flow? Let's look at that. And a new moon on your birthday is like chef's kiss. I love that because it means that everything is brand new this year. It's a fresh seed. So the newness is coming through, the home and that willingness to reset the home and the living situation. But also it's squaring Mars, so it's doing that because it's trying to get you to focus on working with 7th house people, a therapist, an astrologer, meeting somebody new. And it's also opposing the 10th house, which means there could be some career status changes. You're not going to talk to a single Leo rising right now that's not either in a relationship going through this. That's like they live here, I live there, we work here, I work there, somebody has to move. They're all going through it, right? And this one tells me within 6 months of your birthday, there are some pretty dramatic changes that are going to be happening. So if we look at this becoming a full moon in the spring, okay, this becomes a full moon in Scorpio. The full moon is literally right on top of your Mercury-Pluto point. Maybe you're contemplating or talking about maybe moving, or if you'd be open to that, or what changes could be happening in relationships. And, maybe you're traveling for a relationship or you've met someone. And then the North Node is going to come into conjunction with your Mars, which makes me feel like there could be a pretty passionate time kind of going on in the fall of next year. And then you're going to have a Venus retrograde over your natal Venus, which you're probably going to manage a lot better than a lot of other people. Venus retrograde in Scorpio is not fun. And when it is going retrograde, conjunct Mercury, square Pluto, it fucking sucks. So for you, you're playing with home field advantage. So it could be a time where everything that you've been waiting for in terms of relationships and your home life changing could actually be quite positive. What happened in 2018? I mean, I use astrology as a study of cycles, whether we're looking at the sun where it is every year or Saturn where it is every 29 years, and even retrogrades, they will repeat. So go back and think about the fall of 2018. What happened then? This time around, Venus is going to meet with Mercury. So, you could change something about where you're living. You could change your car. You could start discussing moving or relocating. Those things could happen. But I think the North Node sitting in your 7th means there's definitely support coming in, ruled by Saturn, and Saturn's in the 9th. Get ready to travel a lot. Or maybe you meet somebody through traveling or through continuing education. That could definitely be a theme here, right? Anyway, I hope that's helpful. So exciting to see like Jupiter going into your sign next year on your ascendant. I mean, it's close and it's going to oppose Mars and square your sun. And, you've got planets that are all now moving towards the top part of the chart and the horizon. So it's like you're somebody who's like, I like to keep to myself. I have consistency. I like to stay home. This is where I'm safe. And the astrology next year is like, hold my beer. It's wanting you to get so far out of your comfort zone and do things different than what you're used to doing that you can't scorp out. Do something special for this birthday because it is a new moon and because of the aspects that it's making is it's trying to get you to rethink about, how you've been living and if you want to get out of your comfort zone, right? In any way, physically, emotionally, financially, all that stuff. Do something special. Those are usually good new moons. You'll see a couple of birthdays. The next birthday you have, it's around a full moon. Everything will come full circle, but you're fresh start. And the weeks leading up to a new moon birthday like this is like, oh my God, it feels like the cosmic clearing. So there's probably been a lot of stuff going like, what's going on? What's going to happen? Like, don't worry. Set the intentions with the new moon. Watch for the changes with the relationships in your career. And happy early birthday to you. I've had those birthdays. I had a new moon birthday a couple years ago. I'm a Scorpio too. And I had Uranus in opposition to my sun. And that year was nuts. But in all the best ways. All the changes that happened were really good. So with that being said, that was the evening. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me on a Friday. I appreciate it. Please subscribe to the channel. It helps the channel grow. Give me a thumbs up. Stay tuned. We're going to have the astro weather out on Sunday. We're going to talk about the sun in Scorpio trine Jupiter. We have a grand water trine, so we're in our feelings all week. There's pros and cons to it, but we'll talk all about it. Check out your horoscopes and stay with the channel if you want to see more insights on retrogrades, new moons, full moons, all that stuff. I've got you covered. For more about me and my work, and if you want to book a session with me, I'd love to work with you. I'm now booking in February of next year, so things are kind of crazy busy right now, but click the links below, head over to beyondtheveiledtarot.com, where you can see my products, you can see my courses, you can see a little bit more about me. And I am looking forward to seeing what happens with the astrology with this new moon in Scorpio. So come back, leave me your comments. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will catch you back here on Sunday. Until next time. Take care.